Pleasure. I welcome you to the inaugural session of the Integrated Design Research Conference 2022 by the Department of Integrated Design, University of Moratuwa. Well, at a time where innovative thinking, innovative design is needed to reshape Sri Lanka's economy, we are truly glad to meet you in this interdisciplinary platform that actually encourages collaboration between design research, between design education, design practice, towards advancing theories, concepts, and practices of design, both locally as well as globally. So a very warm welcome goes out to our keynote speaker, Dr. Ratna Ramanathan, who is joining us virtually all the way from London. Thank you very much for being here with us today. And of course, all our session chairs who are here, our speakers who are here with us today, and our special guests and our students, a very warm welcome to all of you. A special welcome goes out to the Dean of the Faculty of Architecture, Professor Yasangika Sandanayaka. Thank you very much for being here with us today. And of course, the Director of Research, Professor Ruwan Gopura, thank you very much for being here with us. And of course, as always, we have Emeritus Professor Samita Manavaru. Thank you very much, sir, for being here with us today. And a very warm welcome also goes out to the Head of the Department of Integrated Design, Ms. Melanie Dissanayake. Thank you very much. And a very warm welcome to all of you. So as we kickstart the inaugural session of the Integrated Design Research Conference 2022, we invite all of you to please rise for the national anthem of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka Mata, Mata Sri Lanka, Namo, 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 Namo Mata. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Well, to move forward with the proceedings of the inaugural ceremony, it is now my greatest pleasure to invite the head of the Department of Integrated Design, Ms. Melanie Disanayake, to welcome all of you.
Good afternoon to you all. Dean Faculty of Architecture, Professor Yasangika Sandanayaka, Director Research, Professor Ruwan Gopura, Emeritus Professor Samita Manawadu, Honorable Guest Speakers, Dr. Ratna Ramanathan and Professor Gloria Kondra, staff members, past students and participants. It certainly is a day of importance for the Department of Integrated Design as we display our work after a very long period of silence due to the pandemic and thereafter the situation in the country. This is a good start for all the staff and students who worked hard during the past few months in preparation for the event. They have successfully staged a range of events, including research, final year portfolios, and culture code project work. Design Code 2022 is one shared platform built on the theme of focused design. That is, Design Code in 2017 displayed the works of undergraduates as its primary goal, but this year we as a department has taken a step forward to launch IDR conference, that is the Integrated Design Research Conference, serving as a platform for scientific publication that links design research, design education, and design practice. The Department of Integrated Design at the University of Moratuwa is honing the creative abilities of the young Sri Lankans and play a key role in the country's design education system. With the assistance of academic and non-academic staff and students, we have gradually achieved much within the past years, and on display for the next few days are a few of our achievements. I must especially appreciate the hard work of the dynamic young staff members of the department, steered by the chief organizer, Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama. They worked tirelessly, leaving their comfort zones to make all this a reality. Thank you, everyone, and I wish the Design Code 2022 all success. Thank you.
A very big thank you to Ms. Melanie Disanayake, head of the Department of Integrated Design. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, to get started with our conference, the Integrated Design Research Conference 2022, we are ready to get started with the keynote address for today, and to do the honors of welcoming and introducing our keynote speaker for the day, it is my greatest pleasure to invite the event chair, Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama.
So I am delighted definitely to welcome Dr. Ratna Ramanathan, who is in London, and for this inaugural keynote. And just to let you all know that Design Code 2022 and the Culture and the IDR Research Conference is going to be launched for the first time this year as part of the Department of Integrated Design. So with this opportunity, I would like to introduce Dr. Ratna Ramanathan. She is a practiced design researcher and academic known for her expertise in intercultural communication and alternative publishing practices. She is the head of Central St. Martin's and the Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Arts, London. So previously, Ratna was the head of the School of Communication at the Royal College of Arts, London, And for past 30 years, Ratna had led research-driven, intercultural, multi-platform graphic communication design projects, primarily in Global South, fueled by love for lifelong interest in typography and language, and a belief in communication as a fundamental human right. So key highlights includes the design for the multi-classical library of India of Harvard University Press, and books from internationally renowned alternative press publisher Tara Books. So originally from Chennai, India, Ramanathan is actually known, now based in London. Her research and practice are predominantly focused in the Global South, especially in South Asia. This critical position of situating between two cultural contexts is crucial to Ramanathan's role as an academic. So intercultural practice is a core characteristic of her approach of learning, teaching, and research. So it is my great pleasure to invite Dr. Ramanathan to deliver the inaugural keynote of Design Code 2022 and IDR Research Conference.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak today at the Integrated Design Research Focus Design Conference. I'm delighted to talk and share some thoughts with you on design for and by the Global South, creating frameworks for design practice. Before I go any further, I'd like to talk a little bit about the phrase Global South, which refers to the regions of Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. And it's a term that denotes regions outside of Europe and America, mostly seen to be low income, but mainly politically or culturally marginalized. So the use of this phrase marks a shift from a focus on development or cultural difference between the global north and the global south, and actually emphasizes relations of power. I also refer to a global majority, and this is a term that's used by Rosemary Campbell Stevens, and she says it's a collective term that first and foremost speaks to and encourages those so-called to think of themselves as belonging to a global majority. This refers to people who are Black, Asian, brown, dual heritage, indigenous to the global south, or who have been racialized as minorities. Now globally, these groups of people, of which I'm one, and I suspect many in the audience are, currently represent approximately 80% of the world's population, therefore making us the global majority. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how design is a westernized concept for us, and we teach it in our colleges and our schools through the Western canon primarily. And essentially what I'm making a case for here is the importance for a design for and by the global south, because we are the global majority. I want to thank Sumantri and the team for the invitation to speak today about this topic that's close to my heart. Now, we rarely acknowledge that what we present and how we look at the world and how we think is shaped by our own context, biases, and agendas. So I start by providing a very brief introduction to my education and professional practice. I was born in Chennai, once called Madras, in South India in the 1970s. I went to an English-speaking school, unlike 90% of Indian children, and I had a middle-class upbringing, so therefore I consider myself to be very privileged. As a child, I grew up reading books written by English or American authors because those were the books that were in the Indian educational system. I work primarily with publishing as a framework on intercultural communication projects, and sometimes this is print or ebooks or 100-year design research projects or communication-led roadshows in rural India. I'm the head of college at Central St. Martin's in the University of the Arts London, and I was previously Dean at the Royal College of Art in London. Now, I say this to explain that I could be perceived as a very privileged and fortunate immigrant to the United Kingdom, and I've worked in two of its most elite art and design educational organizations. But it also is noted so you can understand the privilege and the uncertainty from which I speak. To paraphrase Ahmad Ansari, many of the concerns, questions, and observations that I am about to raise come from my own experiences of negotiating between the East and the West, trying to figure out the politics of my practice as a designer and as a researcher. Now, when I did my master's at Central St. Martin's many years ago, I read texts such as these that you might be familiar with: Marshall McLuhan, Elizabeth Eisenstein, Stanley Morrison. Now, Elizabeth Eisenstein and Marshall McLuhan spoke of printing as a revolutionary agent of change that swept across Europe to the rest of the world. And Stanley Morrison's first principles of typography claimed that there was only one really good way in which a book could be designed. But we know that there is a different story. We know that printing predates Gutenberg, not only by the means of xylography, whose use within and from China spread from at least 700 CE, but also movable type in East Asia, metal type in Korea in the 16th century. So the astronomy of print does not describe an outwardly expanding galaxy as suggested by McLuhan, but is actually a universe with multiple points of origin in Asia, in different parts of the world. So it's a pluriverse with Asia as one of its cradles. So in this talk, while I acknowledge the importance of design as a craft, I'm very interested in how we can use design as a fundamental way to understand and engage with the world in both mainstream and experimental and marginalized ways. So some of the examples I refer to today are anchored within an Indian or a South Asian context. And you might wonder, why is this relevant to design more broadly? And I'm very interested in the way that Chris Spinney talks about this. And he says, South Asia becomes a site of investigation in which you can develop a model of practice that is relevant and transportable to other models or contexts. Now, this is really something that's very important from the global majority or global South perspective, because what we're saying is design within a global South context, you can learn from it in the way things are designed, in the way people behave, and translate them to other contexts. And I find this way of thinking really urgent for three reasons. The first is an issue of climate change. As David Attenborough has noted, many of the issues we face in the world today are a result of communication. How we frame things, how we speak about them, how we articulate them visually is something that we need to be accountable for as designers. And this is even about the simplest forms of communication every day. This is a sculpture by Mark Wallinger, and it sits in central London outside the London School of Economics. Now, as Jared Fuller notes, this is fundamentally a design issue, because when people are walking by this, no matter where they come from, tourists or Londoners, the first thing that they say is what? It's upside down. Now, going back to Jared Fuller, not only are we as artists and designers making countless decisions, we're also injecting a point of view onto the reality that we are creating. And the designer, when we select images to accompany text, or we frame this work, we're either reinforcing or subverting the message that's been created. So I want us to think about how we as designers frame the world and the role we play in this. What happens when we turn the tables and view the world from a different perspective? What changes both within us and in the context outside? Let us keep this in mind as we share some time today. The second issue is of the global health crisis and the framing of context. This is a picture of migrant workers traveling from the city to their rural homes in India. On March 24, 2020 at 8 p.m., Narendra Modi appeared on television to announce that from midnight onwards, all of India would be under lockdown. Now, this is a nation of 1.38 billion people who were locked down with zero preparation and with 4 hours of notice. In the words of Arundhati Roy, the lockdown worked like a chemical experiment that suddenly illuminated hidden things. As the wealthy and the middle classes enclosed themselves in gated colonies, our towns and megacities began to extrude the working class citizens, the migrant workers. Many driven out by their employers and landlords, they had nowhere else to go, no public transport in sight, and began a long march to their villages. They walked for days and never made it home. As Arundhati Roy notes, this was driven by class division, not by religion. So what does work from home mean to people who are homeless? The third issue of that is really critical is truth. There is speak in recent years of alternative facts, but anyone from an oppressed or colonized society will know that alternative facts have existed as long as we have been writing history. So this is, after all, the basis of colonialization, to present reality in a manner which suits one's own power, needs, and context. The colonial legacy is a very painful one. Hortus Malabaricus is a comprehensive text that deals with the properties of flora of the Western Ghats in India, covering Kerala, Karnataka, and Goa. It was written in Latin and compiled over 30 years, and the series was conceived by the governor of Dutch Malabar, Hendrik van Reed. The pen and ink drawings of some 720 species are accompanied by very detailed descriptions of each. And apart from the Latin, the plant names are included in Malayalam, Konkani, Urdu, and English, as you can see from the top left of this image. What is very troubling about this text is that while it was collated and compiled by natives, as they refer to, Indian experts in the field, it was only available in Latin till the 21st century. So this text, because it was in Latin, was not accessible or available in any other Indian language. So here you have knowledge about India written with Indian knowledge and is inaccessible to Indians. How is that okay? Now, the origins of printing and publishing in India are very, very entangled with colonial ambitions. Boaventura de Souza notes that these ambitions sought to discredit, erase, or appropriate the knowledges of the global South, with the aim of contributing to a dominant global north knowledge and culture. So, if your language is Tamil, and you imagine the first time that you see your language in print is to communicate a text that is very different from your culture. And imagine the power that is contained in this act of publishing, that you can use someone's language to represent back to them a culture that is not their own. So my question to us is, who decides what is knowledge and who this knowledge is for? What is knowledge if language and visual form prohibit people from accessing this? And what role do we play in this as designers who frame knowledge for reading? As Ahmed Ansari tells us, decolonization means serious political commitments that we have to engage with the colonial and pre-colonial past to have a better understanding, a more critical understanding of the present. So I go back to Tony Fry, who wrote the article Design for and by the Global South. He speaks about how design totally directs the form and content of the environment in which we live. It pervades our lives, constitutes a world within the world, and impacts how we view, understand, use, and extend this world. So what we do, how we live, how we appear, our habits, tastes, and health, plus the way we perceive the natural world, are all configured and shaped by this designed world. And what part do we have to play in it? I'd like to use two examples to illustrate different ways in which the design from the Global South can provide some thinking in terms of frameworks for design practice. For the past 10 years, I've had the honor of working on a unique 100-year publishing library called the Murthy Classical Library of India. Rohan Murthy, who envisioned the library, was inspired by his own education in South Asia, and it is one that I also identify with. The text that Rowan and I studied in school was Shakespearean comedies and tragedies and poems from Wordsworth and Shelley. Sadly missing from it was the same opportunity to partake of our own heritage. The Murthy Classical Library aims to make available the great literary works of the Indian subcontinent, and the first text, actually one of the first texts, was actually from Sri Lankan female monks and poems from them. And what it does is that it aims to readdress the balance. Many classical texts have never reached a global audience, and others are even accessible even to readers such as us, even though it is our heritage. So this series provides modern English translations, many for the first time, alongside a vast number of languages. And the text is published in both the regional script alongside the translation. Now for me, the project was important for reasons stated by Sheldon Pollock, the editor of the series, who identified a critical need to address the situation, or else Indians and the rest of the world would not have access to the Indian subcontinent classical heritage. The second is something that two British designers, Jack Schultz and Timo Arnold, wrote about in I magazine, and it's available on their blog. They called it change through making. They noted that what we need to keep in mind is that we can design the means through which design happens. We can challenge concepts, we can challenge behaviors, we can rethink the means of production as well as designing the form. And the chance to be a part of the Murthy Library project gave me the impetus for this opportunity to begin to form a series of guidelines for Indic typography. The second example I like to use is Tara Books. Founded in 1994 by a group of writers and designers committed to different principles, Tara was interested in changing the perspective from which stories are told. They wanted to expand authorship and the idea of the book object, and they were really keen that design played a role in the publishing process. Tara Books are the result of collaborations with unusual talent from different places, and their aim is to reflect the richness and breadth of these perspectives. So I learned through Tara that the making, designing and producing of a book is based on community. That publishing is a collaborative enterprise where the success of a book is not just the authors, but actually because of the publishing process being dialogic, collective and dependent on the work of others, it belongs to the whole community. Tara saw the rich and popular vernacular traditions of South Asia were missing from the books of the day. So their mission was to enter into uncharted territory, to reject misogynistic, casteist or racist content, and to challenge dull, moralizing children's books. When I asked publisher Geeta Wolf what she saw publishing as, she remarked that it was a conversation between the book and the reader, but also importantly behind the people who make, design and produce the books. At Tara Books, we think of the book as a moment in time, a picture of a much longer process, she says. There is a story of how the book was designed and made, then you have the book object itself, and then once the book is published, you have the story of how it is read and received and what happens as a result of that. Now in this book, I See a Promised Land. This is a conversation between cultures and a collaboration between two people of very different walks of life. It tells the story of Martin Luther King through the patwa art of artist Manu Chitrakar and the words of the writer-storyteller Arthur Flowers. It's a graphic novel that links the Bengali art tradition with contemporary texts, and Martin Luther King dedicated most of his adult life to the idea that people should be equal. So it makes sense that the work that's talking about his life is multicultural. Now the work with Tara Books has also been about giving voice to marginalized people who don't normally get a voice. I worked on this book, The London Jungle Book, with a brilliant Goan artist called Baju Sham. And this book is titled both as a homage and a counterpoint to Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, because it tells the story of Baju's journey to London from India rather than Kipling's from London to India. This was Baju's to London from India. The London Jungle Book was summarized by Baju by talking about it, and he said, "The Sahib wrote about my tribe. Now it's my turn to write about him." Now this is the text that actually is about Sri Lanka. With very sophisticated reading culture, Tara has explored this aspect of India through their books in multiple ways. They often ignore market and classification, change through making. They use the book to tell important and difficult accounts, such as The Boy Who Speaks in Numbers, which is set in Sri Lanka and told from the perspective of a young boy. It's an account of childhood in times of war, and it narrates something that could equally happen. Remember what Crispini said about South Asian context. This could happen anywhere in the world, in Ukraine for example, in all places where human deaths are reduced to just numbers, and where guns do not differentiate between adults and children. Now, the other way of expanding reading that is explored is through typography. And this is really challenging typography as a fundamental way to understand and engage with the world with children. Tara's approach to picture books challenges conventional separations of image and text and blurs the boundaries of what image or text should do. There was a place for typography to play, race, and build a narrative across a page, and you explore voice, tone, accent, and context, with each designed to reflect the world around the book rather than just the original text. Now, publishers like Tara also challenge the process by asking the designer to have a voice. So in this book that I designed, I have an equal status to the author who wrote it. They were the first publishers in India to acknowledge that design plays a very predominant part in the publishing process. That design can be a strict and conventional process, but it can also be intuitive, experimental, warm, and humorous. It is design and typography that helps us situate different narratives within a local context. It takes the question about human experience and relates it to specific context visually. This is a poem about politics, oppression, and war, written by a German author, Christian Morgenstern, and it's contextualized in a modern setting and brought to life. The book became a research space to understand the politics that surrounds typography and language, and how we use aesthetics as a voice and a language in itself. As the publisher Geeta Wolf notes, for us, design is not something that we use to simply make things look nicer. Design is integral to that guides you quietly through the book, and how it can become more apparent. So the role of design here is that it doesn't have to be loud, but it could be, you can make decisions about how design holds things together like a voice in itself. Now, research played a really key part in this, in setting the context that the poem was written in. We tried to embed a sense of authenticity within the design through material, narrative, and production, and we undertook the research over 3 years using different sources. Investigations were made into typography and language and paid particular attention to how it could be used as a medium for social and political themes. And the photographic documentation of war in Germany played a really important part in guiding what the design looked like. The typography, after experimenting and testing, we tried different things and used Futura, as is reflected in Morgenstern's poem. And finally used some modern cultural references, a Calder mobile, a remembered scene from the film Life is Beautiful, to see how memories and references can relate to different generations. So research becomes the necessary navigation for design, and then some spreads are typographically representative, like this of the Nuremberg rally, or like bombs falling from the sky. By not using language anywhere specifically, the text becomes much open in interpretation. Now, relatability is also about mediums, and The Land of Punctuation was translated from a book into a ballet performance in the South Korean context. And this is what I mean by a pluralistic design process, where there is both collective ownership and where a text doesn't just belong to the author, but to all of us. I'm hoping I can play a tiny part of it before I wrap up this talk, so I hope that the sound will work for you. So to wrap up, I would like to say this, that in order for us to address global challenges such as climate, health, fake news, we need frameworks that cross cultures and contexts. How do we build this into a design for the global south, these intercultural frameworks for design practice? For me, the first is through a depth and interrogation of research. Research not as an elite activity, but as a daily practice. A genuine need and compulsion to know and understand that which is not known or understood. Research is a fundamental human act as described by Arjun Appadurai. The second is not working alone. We need each other. All of the work I have presented today is the result of working closely in cooperation with multiple people across the world. People who have a depth of knowledge about their own practices and disciplines and are seeking to learn from others who are not like themselves. So these frameworks are not built in isolation, but in practice with others. The third is to understand the politics of our tools. Everything we touch and shape has an action that is beyond us. We need to hold ourselves accountable, but also empower ourselves with this understanding of how we shape the world. As Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby wrote, the design process is informed by values based on a specific worldview, our way of seeing and understanding reality. So nothing we do is neutral. It is informed by who we are and how each of us has been designed and shaped. As DeSantos challenges us, this means that we need to look at resetting and reshaping the basis of what we call knowledge and practice. It needs a complete reset of what we consider to be knowledge, what we might consider to be design, and how we frame this within the global south context as a part of the global majority. And for what purpose and to what success about doing constructive work together. And for me, this is the work, the belief that drives my practice, my teaching and my research, that communication is a fundamental human right, that everyone on this earth deserves to be communicated with and to be able to communicate with others in a form, tone, mode, script, or language with truth and ethics in a way that is appropriate and relevant to all of us. I'll end by saying a huge heartfelt thank you to you all for your time today. I'm very sorry that I can't be with you in Sri Lanka, a home of my heart, and I hope that in calmer times that we will all have a chance to meet up and I will be able to be with you in person. Until then, I think I say Aibovan, Vanakkam. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak today at the Integrated Design Research Focus Design Conference. I'm delighted to talk and share some thoughts with you on design for and by the Global South, creating frameworks for design practice. Before I go any further, I'd like to talk a little bit about the phrase Global South, which refers to...
Thank you so much. So thank you so much to our keynote. And so that being delivered, and I think it is time now to start the scientific sessions. To this, I would like to introduce Dr. Vasala, Kamal Vasala, to be in charge of the session. And for this, I would like to introduce Dr. Vasala. So Dr. Vasala is a senior lecturer of the Department of Integrated Design. He is known for his interest in industrial design, interaction design, and fashion design. He's obtained his PhD in design from Queensland University of Technology, Brisbane, Australia, and his Masters of Arts and Design practice is specialized on product design from the Buckinghamshire New University. So over to you, Dr. Vasala.
Thank you, Dr. Sumantri. And it's a wonderful day, and it's a milestone of I think it's in the country as well, right? We are actually doing the first IDR, that's a design research conference in Sri Lanka dedicated to design. So I'm quite honored. And let's start. We have our first presenter. He's presenting online. His research is about the topic is role of artificial intelligence, text-to-image tools in design education. His name is Rishikesh Rajendra Sindhi, and I will talk a little bit about the presenter. Rajendra Sindhi is a master's student at the National Institute of Design, NID, India, studying transportation and automotive design course. With the recent advancements in AI model for concept generation, he believes in making a valuable contribution to the already powerful design process, generally applied in the design education. So that's his area. So I would like to invite the presenter to carry on with his presentation.
And I am a master's student of transportation and automobile design at the National Institute of Design, India. So before going to the presentation, I would like to thank IDR Integrated Design Research 2022 conference for giving me this opportunity and present my seminar abstract. The title of the study is Role of Artificial Intelligence Text-to-Image Tools in Design Education. So I will take you through the contents of this presentation. The contents of this presentation are as follows. Introduction, what is an AI image generator, the design process, what is the research about, problem statement, process, and research instrumentation. Heading to the presentation, I would like to introduce you to a quote by Stephen Hawking. I believe that there is no deep difference between what can be achieved by a biological brain and what can be achieved by a computer. It therefore follows that computer can, in theory, evaluate human intelligence and exceed it. So, right now we are living in the era of AI, where AI is becoming more powerful and smart day by day. So, the quote of Stephen Hawking, as it says, can be held true, as it is replicating human intelligence to a certain extent. Introduction. In the year 2015, there was a demonstration of first AI image automated captioning. So as you can see on the right hand side of this slide, there is an image of a busy subway train station with several people and a train and the architecture of the subway station. And you can see some boxes around it. The boxes are pretty much for the AI model, wherein the AI model is trying to understand what are the constituents of this picture, and based upon that it will try to come up with the words that will match these images and the object in this picture. So as you can see, there has been a caption generated for this picture, a group of people walking in a subway station. So this was somewhat a pivotal point for the development of AI models. Since then, several AI models are developed that perform the image to text and vice versa. And on this slide, you can see an image of a rabbi holding an avocado in his hand. And so the image states that to be or not to be by holding avocado image sculpture. So this was the text prompt fed to the OpenAI's DALL-E program. As you can see, the image is spectacular and the details of it are also mesmerizing. So this power of an AI image to text model is really fascinating for the generation. So let us understand what is an AI image generator. In simple terms, AI image generator is a computer code that employs deep learning algorithm to create realistic images from text description. As you can see, the internet is also populated with several AI models, wherein you can create artworks with the help of a single clicks and few words. Amongst them, popular ones are DALL-E E2, Stability AI, Midjourney, Night Cafe, Arbreeder. In recent times, there has been a phenomenal increase in the rise of popularity of text-to-image AI generator models. So many individuals are trying to get their hands on this technology and come up with their own imagination and mesmerizing artworks. So let's understand how does it work. The working of this AI model is pretty much simple. You just have to come up with few words and that you can feed it to the program. So the first step of this program is it opens up with a simple text box. As you can see, you can enter your text or you can enter your prompt that you wish to generate artworks and click on the run button. But behind the scenes, your text is fed to the program to generate images. The text or the prompt that you have fed to the AI model is then given to the algorithm, and then the program searches for the words, understands those terms, and comes up with the next process. The program tries to understand the prompt. It then tries to make sense of what is happening and what the input has been given. So then it tries to divide the text into different parts and try to match them with the large data set of images that has been given to it and onto which the program has been built. So in the next process, it runs through billions of labeled images. So it tries to match up with the words that has been given into the prompt and the images that are available. So then it tries to come up with several images that are already fed to the program and on the internet as well, and then try to make sense of it what the user wants to see. So through its deep learning algorithm, it understands the images and generates an image from scratch through a multiple iterations and consequently reducing the noise from the very first stage, and then comes up with a clear image that it has created from scratch upon the algorithm and on its own. Let's see what's its application. So it is used for creating image, beautiful artworks. Here you can see an astronaut holding a flower which is created by OpenAI program. Next, you can see another artwork creation in Chrome style, Chrome artwork by Deep AI. Here you can see different kinds of tennis posters that are developed with the help of Midjourney. So it was an official ad for Wimbledon. And also do not forget the non-fungible tokens, which are also known as NFTs, and it is a booming trend right now. This is Artsy Monkey developed by Google AI, and then ultimately for video production as well. So as you can see, it is also helpful for different studios that develop films and entertainment media. As you can see, this is the WandaVision by Marvel Studios. And ultimately, do not forget to have fun also, because recently it is really spectacular to use this AI model and come up with different artworks. So many users have been using it and having fun. So this ends my first element of the study. So proceeding to the next element of the study is the design process. The design process is a famous technique for most of the design practitioners around the globe. It consists of 4 stages: discover, define, develop, and deliver. So as you can see, the first step diverges into another level, and then it converges, again it diverges, and then converges. So it creates a shape, when you try to visualize this, it creates a shape of double diamond. So this process is also known as double diamond process. So let us try to understand the 4 Ds of double diamond process. So the first stage is discover. In discover, the goal is to immerse yourself in the problem completely through research. You have to understand the problem, empathize with the user, and try to make notes of which are sensible for the product or any solution that you are trying to make. And then the next stage is define. In this stage, the goal is to turn the research data into a conquerable problem. So this mostly accommodates the formulation or synthesis of a problem that is helpful for a user or a designer to come up with different solutions that will best suit the needs. And then the third stage is develop. Here the goal is to produce potential solution for the problem that we have defined. You will come up with different ideas, you'll come up with different solutions, and then try to evaluate them based upon different parameters that you have set up. And the last stage of this is deliver. The goal is to validate the solution that work and prepare the design for release into a world. Ultimately, after completing this design process, your product or your solution should meet the needs of the user and work in the environment to a satisfactory level, ultimately completing the design process. So after having studied this, I try to come up with a problem statement for my study. How does the application of artificial intelligence based tools play a role in developing concepts in design education? So it is the stage where I combine AI with the design process. So the next is the premise of my study. The premise of my study is pretty much simple. So for an artist or a designer at nascent stage, the assistance of visual clues, whether it be written words, pictures or symbols, is crucial to develop the work. We will talk about this later in the slides. So the study aims at evaluating the rate of desired idea or concept generation with the help of AI-based computer models, computer softwares, and understand the outcomes of the process and its feasibility in conventional design education. So before heading to the procedure of my work, let me tell you my concern. In most practices, to understand or to draw inspiration for a project, practitioners usually look for visual clues in any form. But in order to come up with these visual clues, it takes a great deal of time to look for the suitable inspiration material that is available online. And in that process, many times we get lost with our context. So we have to again come back to the context and look for the exact visual cues that we can utilize in developing the solution or a product. So for example, initially starting with this research problem, this problem statement, I try to develop few AI based images with the help of text prompt. For example, this is my text prompt, future La La Land, wherein on the left hand side you can see an image created by Night Cafe Studio. But my interpretation before using image generator which are shown in the pictures on the right hand side, where you can see a skyscraper building, futuristic vehicles, amusement park on top of a skyscraper. So from this you come to know that my interpretation and the software's interpretation is pretty much different. So this is the phenomenon that I want to understand, how we can utilize this imagination and the ideas that are being developed by this model and incorporate it in the design process. So on this page you can see there are several iterations that I have tried to come up with on the same text prompt as in La La Land. So in the first image you can see a mesmerizing image, very artistic, and on the second you can see the image has tried to come up with several scenes and has tried to include people as well. On the third image you can see the model is confused with words that can go into this prompt, but replicating the effects of light and shadow and the human pretty well. So my process is pretty simple, wherein I will try to come up with some models that I try to work on, and it will include voluntary recruitment of participants. after the participants who are familiar with the AI model and have gone through several iterations of this image creation, artwork generation. And then I'll try to understand participants' view of AI model, what they think about this AI model, and what are their ideas regarding to this different AI models. And then there will be a concept generation activities wherein I will ask the user to come up with few text or few prompts and develop an understanding of it based upon their own. So this understanding will be for manual attempt, and another stage would be to develop that same concept with the help of AI model. And then I'll try to make a relative comparison between the manual artwork as well as the digital artwork, and which suits the best for their design process or their project. And then I'll try to record the feedback wherein I'll try to understand what is the scope of their study, and what improvisation can be made into their artwork, and as well as the respective disciplines, and incorporate those feedbacks into my results, and whatever conclusions comes, it will be a great contribution to this AI which are in the developing stage. So the research instrumentation for my study are AI models that develop images, artwork with respect to the given prompts. Uh, and then the primary research will include focus group activities based on concept, idea development phase, and interviews, so as to understand what the people have in mind about the AI, and what possibilities they think of can be achieved with the help of this tool. So the next is objectives. So for several objectives were there, but amongst them I tried to come up with the important ones. To determine the rate of ability in generating expected outcomes in both scenarios with manual result as well as AI model result, because manual results will be developed before the experimentation with AI model, and then a relative comparison will help us understand which suits the best for further iteration. And then understanding the tendency and inclination towards AI or manual result. So here I'll try to understand on the inclination. I mean, which one is more preferable? The one with the manual technique that people have come up with, or the one with the AI model that people have developed using a few words and a pre notion in their mind. So the parameters for this will be aesthetic of the image, exactness of image with regard to the prompt, and clarity of the concept and image. So this sums up my importance about using this tool. So moving on to the scope of my research study. Scope is newly emerging practices of generating visuals using AI models simply by feeding text prompts. As you can see, these kind of programs are being developed on a fast pace, and these things can be incorporated in the design process. Therefore, the feasibility is also important, and the study of feasibility of AI model application in the design process can be useful for the desirability of the visual results and the rate of developing images. And then relative comparison of the concept that an individual is trying to achieve. So with the help of relative comparison, I would like to understand which one is more suitable, and can the AI model be really useful in their design processes and speed up their project, and try to achieve their intention within less amount of time. And also maintaining a record of participants' feedback, as it will try to help improvise the program specific to their domains as well as in general. So discussing about the delimitations, delimitations are the access to certain online AI model is limited and request to register in the waiting list of their server. Even though the internet is populated with different AI models, but there are waiting lists wherein users have to register and wait for the program to respond, and then they can try their hands on. And another thing is results may vary based on the program that has been used. different kind of programs, different kind of AI models develop different outputs. So we'll have to be really careful in choosing those outputs and come up with a matching element that is being put first in our study. So there is no guiding mechanism for generating image, so it is difficult to have a control over them. The only thing is we can feed text to the program, but after other than that we don't have any other control mechanism over it. So whatever deep learning has been going into the program and the understanding of the program, it will try to come up with images, but the alteration of those images is only possible when we try different iterations. The iterations are exhaustible in nature to a certain extent, but the program can create many different variations of the same. And then moving on to the sources of data, my sources for research would be artists, design students, and professional practitioners as participants, who are having sound knowledge of this AI model and have been using it in their work. Another would be focus group activity, which will help me to understand a decent amount of sample and interact with them and conduct this research activity wherein I can make a relative comparison on a good level. And study of the topics related to machine intelligence, automated image captioning, visual generating AI models. With this, I conclude my presentation on the role of artificial intelligence in text-to-image tools in design education. Thank you and have a nice day. Hello everyone, my name is Rishikesh Shinde and I am a master student of Transportation and Automobile Design at the National Institute of Design, India. So before going to the presentation, I would like
Thank you, Rajendra. So it's a wonderful presentation. So what we are going to do is we have few presentations. We are straight away going for those presentations. Then after that, like all of you have this notebook with you. Take down notes. If you have any questions about the research, you can take down notes, right? Then later on, we will have a dedicated Q&A session, right? So now, I would like to invite the second presenter. It's a research done by two authors. The first author is Kavisha Munasinghe, and the second author is Ruwandika Senanayake. The research is, the topic is causative factors for the acceptance of denim as clothing fashion by Sri Lankan consumers. I will say a little bit about the author, the first author who is going to present it today. Kavisha Munasinghe is a fashion designer graduated from University of Moratuwa. Her work focuses on studying the interrelationship among fashion, society, and culture of different contexts as an approach to establish sustainable ties between people and fashion. As a distinct facets of her research journey, she is exploring denim-based fashion through different aspects. So, Kavisha, now you can start your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kavisha Munasinghe, and I'll be presenting the research causative factors for the acceptance of denim as a clothing fashion by Sri Lankan consumers. This is a research authored by me and co-authored by Mrs. Ruwandika Senanayake. First of all, let's see what denim is. As we all know, denim is a fabric, a name given to a fabric that we all have in our wardrobes. But when it comes to today, denim has not become just a fabric, it has become a global fashion. in the 15th century, in the time of 15th century, denim has used as a material which is used to make tents and workwear, then military uniforms, and eventually it has been developed and evolved into a high fashion, global fashion, which ranges from day-to-day casual wear to high luxury fashion. When comes to fashion, related to denim in Sri Lankan context, compared to international context, the studies undertaken on denim is very less. So the available studies are also mostly depending on the technical aspects of denim material. Then identifying this gap, I took the research approach to study on denim as a clothing fashion within the context of Sri Lanka. This research solely focused on two major areas. One is involvement of denim in Sri Lankan clothing practice, which is conducted as a qualitative analytical study through a literature survey. The main part of my research is identification of factors causing current local acceptance of denim. This was done using analytical study according to convergent parallel mixed method, where qualitative and quantitative details are gathered separately and they are interrelated to make the analysis. In this, I have used dual perspective analytical framework for further proceedings. When it comes to the first part of my research, which involves the denim, which talks about involvement of denim in Sri Lankan clothing practice, I have represented the research findings as a chronological order spanning from 1950s onwards, which has an iconic pattern drastically different from global evolution of denim, which is prominently affected by social statuses of people and different political influences and so on. When it comes to the major part of my this research, the major part is identification of factors causing current local acceptance of denim. For this, as an highlighting part, the research is based on an analytical framework, which we can call as a dual perspective analytical framework, which is retrieved and modified from Solomon's model of comparison process, which is based on consumer behavior. The reason for taking consumer behavior as the basis for this study is that for any fashion to be accepted, it is the prominent role has to be played by the consumer. Therefore, the easiest way to identify these acceptance factors is looking at the consumer behavior thoroughly. So, taking that approach, I have divided this analytical framework into three phases, the same phases of consumer behavior process, called as pre-consumption or pre-purchase behavior, on-consumption or purchase behavior, post-consumption or post-purchase behavior. Each phase of this consumer behavior process is looked at through two perspectives, one from the consumer itself, and other perspective is the industrial perspective, which includes the perspectives of manufacturers, designers, marketeers, and similar other personals. Through this, from the consumer's perspective, it is possible to identify the factors what consumers identify in denim, which encourages them to buy and consume denim continuously. In the other hand, in the industrial perspective, we can identify the steps taken by the industry to encourage consumers to engage and continue in consuming these products. At the end of the analysis, I was able to interrelate both these perspectives together and sort out a list of acceptance factors which was denim acceptable within Sri Lankan consumer base. When it comes to sample selection and data collection, the consumer perspective was identified through a questionnaire survey given to 100 undergraduate students from government university around Colombo district. And the other perspective was identified through a case study done on Long Island clothing company, which is known as LICC Jeans, due to its local origin and maintenance of global standards. These are the questionnaires which I have given to undergraduates focus with structured questions focusing on specific areas that are required to this research. And the interview was also conducted basing on a questionnaire. And all the findings from questionnaires were graphically represented in the, as seen in this. And these quantitative data and the qualitative data which I have gathered from the interviews, the both qualitative and quantitative data were separated in discussed lengthily in descriptive manner, and it was separated into 3 phases of consumer behavior as the analysis. When at the end of my research, I was able to use the dual perspective analysis, dual perspective analysis on the framework which I have introduced, and take all the descriptive analysis and sort out it into 16 factors which consumers identify as acceptance factors of denim, and also some 14 factors, supportive factors, which also can be contributory involved in acceptance of denim as a contribution from the industry. So these are some elaborations of the facts that I have discussed and summed up in the final findings. As an example, I can say from the questionnaire survey, which were given to the undergraduate students, I was able to obtain data that prior usage experience is one of the most important things for them to accept denim in future, accept denim and continue accepting and consuming denim. Then another fact which was important was to current fashion trends. Then further I studied how these people, these selected sample get their trends, get to know about their trends. And these are the frequencies that I obtained. Simultaneously, when interviewing the industrial perspective, then I was able to identify the efforts taken by the industry is more relatable to the data which gathered from this student sample, because when considering these trends, the industry itself tries to make new trends and introduce foreign trends to Sri Lanka. They continuously make efforts like promotional campaigns, use social media, and many other methods to give new trends and make popular new trends. And when it comes to requirement, the denim brands, as an example, LICC, works on introducing new product lines, new requirements like plus size collections, then maternity collections, kids wear collections, and seasonal collections, which by understanding these facts and descriptively analyzing these things, we can understand the effort taken by the industry, and as well as how these efforts and the inherent natures of denim contributes the acceptance of denim throughout the period by its consumers. When it comes to the importance of this research, I suggest that this dual perspective analytical framework, which is used in this research, can be used as a model to identify acceptance factors of any fashion or any other consumer product category. And also for any stakeholder who is engaged in fashion sector can use this knowledge on factors causing acceptance of a fashion to thrive in this industry. And also this research gives a comprehensive understanding on denim-based evolution, consumer behavior, values of denim, and the industrial contribution on denim acceptance. So all these comprehensive areas can be used in for any person who is enthusiastic and interested on these fields for their future works. As an example, I would like to present myself that I initially conducted this research together with Mrs. Ruwantika Senanayaka, and I was able to continue as an extension of this research to step into another research, which is an introduction of sustainable approach to denim weaving in Sri Lanka. For your enthusiasm, these are some of the experiments which I have done, and these are some of the designs I was able to come up with. And all these things, for initial step of all these things, I was able to take the research findings which I have obtained from this research. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavisha. It's a wonderful presentation. And now let's move on to the third presentation. It is going to be again another really interesting presentation. The topic is Variable Sinhala Typeface Towards Responsive Design and Explorations. The presenter is Satira Pereira, and the paper or the research is co-authored by Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama. Let me talk a little bit about the author, the presenter here today. Satira Raveen Pereira is a graduate of the Department of Integrated Design, Faculty of Architecture, University of Moratuwa. He is specialized in media and communication design and currently working at Hydro Energy Group, United Kingdom, as a media and communication designer. The work presented here is a part of his undergraduate final year project, Variable Single Typeface Towards Responsive Design and Exploration. Here, he explored the potentials of designing a first ever Sri Lankan Sinhala typeface with variable and responsive qualities. Let's give him a warm welcome to start his presentation.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. Hope you are having fun and hope you are getting exposure to new knowledge. My name is Satira and I'm an integrated designer. And this is my comprehensive design project I did as my final year project. So my project title is Variable Sinhala Typeface toward Responsive Design. And there are 3 keywords to my project: variable typeface, responsive design, and Sinhala typeface. And you may not familiar with any of these keywords. So I have, my whole project is based on these 3 keywords. So there's 2 videos to explain these keywords. So
typography. It's everywhere we look. In the books we read, on the websites we visit, even in everyday life, on street signs, bumper stickers, and product packaging. Typography is a style or appearance of text. It can also refer to the art of working with text, something you probably do all the time if you create documents or other projects for work, school, or yourself. Letters were invariable for a long time. But since the 1960s, moving type, or kinetic typography, was introduced when feature films started using animated opening titles instead of static text. Kinetic typography is an animation technique that uses moving text to capture attention, set a tone, and entertain. It seems to be everywhere right now. Commercials, music videos, mobile apps, and websites use it to make their words more impactful and add an element of artistry. While the web is entering a new, exciting, and uncharted domain, web fonts have remained static and stagnant since time immemorial. That all changed with the arrival of variable fonts, which have revolutionized the way we see and interact with web fonts. These fonts can extend several styles within a single file using coding languages CSS and JavaScript, and they provide new experiences and make communication techniques much more exciting and efficient. Variable typography allows a developer to fully utilize the potential of responsive web design by modifying or animating the typeface. This variable and responsive typography is still in the early stages of development, incorporating a variety of factors such as user interactions, mouse interactions, face gestures, sound and light, and so on.
All of these responsive variable typography experiments use Latin typefaces. However, due to the large visual variations of Sinhala characters, no Sinhala responsive variable typefaces have been produced. So let's learn about Sinhala typefaces a bit.
Which is spoken by about 16 million Sinhalese people in Sri Lanka. It is also used as a second language by another 3 million people belonging to other ethnic groups in Sri Lanka. The Sinhala alphabet consists of 61 letters, 18 vowels, 41 consonants, and 2 semi-consonants. All these individual characters have unique anatomical features. To write Sinhala letters correctly, they should be written on 5 lines. This is known as the 5 rule, or 5 reference rule writing method. Those 5 rules or lines consist of a top line, intermediate line, middle line, and bottom line. The letters in the Sinhala alphabet can be grouped according to how they are written. The letters that are written in between the top lines and the middle lines are categorized as the Arohana Akshara, or ascending letters. The letters that are written in between the intermediate lines and the middle lines are categorized as the Madhya Akshara, or base letters. And the letters that are written in between the intermediate lines and the bottom lines are categorized as the Avarohana Akshara, or descending letters. However, there is no rule or ratio for maintaining the letter's width when writing. Sinhala letters, like everything else, are built up of anatomies. For example, letter Sa is made of an I with a horizontal line, base stroke, curve-to-curve joint, and a closed eye. These anatomical characteristics distinguish Sinhala characters. Even the letters that appear to be the same have 2 completely different sounds due to a minor anatomical difference. The letters below, for example, look similar, only one has a curve-to-curve joint, whereas the other has a hump in the ascending stroke. The letter on the left side sounds as O, and the letter in the right side sounds as Ba. Sinhala letters have been static and lack mobility due to these vast visual variances of Sinhala characters.
So my question was, is it possible to design dynamic Sinhala typefaces that change from one Sinhala letter to another letter, or one Sinhala word to another word? So this experimental project is to try out the possibilities of Sinhala variable typography. Simply put, my project goal or challenge is to transform one Sinhala letter into another. So the purpose of this project is static Sinhala fonts are uninteresting due to its lack of mobility. This can be changed by making the typeface dynamic and flexible. To increase the user experience, user engagement, usability with stylish and amazing responsive text. The legibility, readability, and the accessibility of the website text can be all improved. To begin and expand the possibilities of employing variable and responsive text with other applications in the future. So there were numerous phases for the project. I'll go one by one. So the phase one, using an existing font designed to try out the experiment. To do this, I took FM Gamunu. In Sri Lanka, FM Gamunu is the most widely used Sinhala display font. To begin, I chose 2 letters from FM Gamunu and attempt to transform one of them into another. Method 1, disconnecting letters anatomically and try to edit one letter to another. Why anatomy of the letters are important part of the characters. Method 2, I attempt to variate the letters in accordance with the 5 rules. Why? When writing letters, this is a set ratio. The method 1, disconnecting letters anatomically and try to variate one letter to another. So to do this, I have to first examine FM Gamunu anatomical variations. So these are the anatomy analysis I did for all the characters in Sinhala alphabet of FM Gamunu. So this is method done. As you can see, I disconnect the letters anatomically and try to variate one letter into another. Try to variate one anatomy into the other anatomy in the other letter. So these are the experiment in that method. So method 2, attempting to variate the letters in accordance with the 5 rules. So what I did here was I divide the letters by its rules, 5 rules, and try to change the element in one line to the element in the other line in the other letter. So these are the experiments I did in method 2. However, due to the issues listed below, this wasn't successful. Identify problem in method 1, different curvature around corner radius. You can see in the images. Different stroke thickness in same letter. Different stroke thickness in different letters. Anatomical variation. For example, letter J has insected joint and it cannot be differentiated in this typeface. Different interpretation of the same anatomical feature. Width of the letters are different. When anatomical pieces are detached, their heights can be vary. Problems in method 2. Different stroke thickness in same letter inside the same line. Different stroke thickness in different letters. Stroke and anatomies are overlapping on lines. So but the square shape of this letter is one of the quality aspects of FM Gamunu typeface. Why? It makes much easier to variate letters using the horizontal and vertical axes. To overcome the above problems I mentioned earlier, I need to develop a new typeface reference to FM Gamunu. So by mapping out the letters on a grid, the letters development can be simplified. Why? The grid may easily obtain the same stroke thickness, letter heights, 5 rule reference, etc. The phase 2, new typeface developing experiments. So to start the experiment, I use the minimum number of squares and try to increase the squares and get the perfect letter. This was a very long process because I had to do this for all the 60 characters in Sinhala alphabet. So in the initial stages, I had 9 square lines horizontally and 11 square lines vertically. So these were the letters in phase 1. So, but user testing showed that some anatomical elements of the letters were unreadable. They were overlapping and it difficult to recognize the lines, etc. So to conquer the challenges, it was easy and difficult at the same time because all I had to do is add lines, but also there are 60 characters, which is a long process. So in here, I to make the loop visible, I added 2 square lines. As you can see, it's like the blinking lines. So same thing I did for other to overcome the other issues in the process. So this is the new grid. It consists of total horizontal square lines and squares and vertical 29 vertical squares. So this is the developed typeface. And I said this in my previous presentations also. This is one of the proudest moments in this project, because designing a font is not easy. And it's very difficult, and I'm very proud as a student I could design a typeface. And it's not perfect, but we can make it perfect with more user testing. So my developed typeface, the stroke thickness same, designed perfectly according to the 5-rule writing method. Corners of the letters have the same curvature radius. All the letters are same in width except few. All the letters are anatomically designed correctly, which is very important. So it is important to note that this is a display font rather than a body font. So these are the use testing I did for the letters. So experiment with animating and variating the typeface that were designed. This is the most fun phase of this project. The letters, animating the letters based on one principle. The anatomical parts can be used to separate the letters and use them to vary along the axis. So here comes the animation, letter to letter animations. So this is letter J changing to letter E. Letter to words animation without vowels. Letters to change to 2-letter words. And these are all experiments. 2-letter words to 4-letter word. Letter to words animation with vowels. So this is in English Sinhala to language. Yeah. Different mediums change. Yeah. And audio, visual. Digital alphabet. So converting the experimental animations to responsive variable type using CSS and JavaScript. You can do this using CSS and JavaScript, which is a bit long process, but there's a plugin called Lottie Files where I animated this using Adobe After Effects. So you can use this plugin to export JSON file and animated SVG, which is very easy to do. So implementing the design responsive variable typefaces. So this responsive typeface can be integrated with many factors such as user interaction, mouse interaction, face gestures, sound, light, so on. So here I integrated this with the mouse pointer. So as you can see, when the mouse pointer changes from one icon to the other, the text shows the relevant text, and it's very mouse sensitive, and when it's in the middle of 2 icons, show the you get the idea. And in here I integrated it with sound. So Sinhala musical notes have Sari, Gama, Padanisa, so this is that. So yeah, so that's the project, and you can use this anywhere you want, and that be creative. That's up to the designer who are using this. And as future development, we can integrate this many technologies to increase the user interaction, and you can make this use this in train station, bus station, etc. And you can use this framework and apply to other languages also, so we can change from one language to another language. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, that's the project. And thank you so much, madam, for the right guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Satira, for that wonderful presentation. And now we are moving to the fourth presentation, fourth research. The topic is communicative factors in visual abstraction of a Kithul tree in an 18th century mural paintings of Sri Lanka. The research is authored by Praneeth Pereira and also co-authored by Ms. Melanie Disanayaka. And let me talk a little bit about our presenter here today, Praneeth Pereira. He's an instructor at the Department of Integrated Design, Faculty of Architecture at the University of Moratuwa, and he holds a Bachelor of Design Honors degree from the department. And also he's specialized in product design side, product design discipline. And especially he co-founded a company called Partnership Design Service. Right, that's a wonderful portfolio. And also I would like to warmly welcome our fourth presenter, Mr. Pranit Perera. Please come here.
Hello everyone, I'm Pranit Perera. Actually, my co-author is Ms. Melanie Disanayaka. Our research is about visual abstraction of a mural painting element, especially focusing on the Kithirul 3 element in 18th century mural paintings in Sri Lanka to uncover the communicative factors. And this is one of my third year design projects and consecutively developed for some time. When it comes to the 18th century, it is very significant phase because when it comes to, let's say, in the temple paintings point of view, it is the transitional phase from natural style to semi-stylistic style. We can find the 18th century in the semi-stylistic version, and above all, we can find evidences about the evolutionary lifestyle, about the civilization, and also we can see people, according to the evidences, we can see people are more connected with the natural environment with different cultural means. And we can see in the temple paintings, a lot of trees and plants are incorporated in different manners with suitable variations, of course. Our special focus in this research is about visual abstraction, which incorporates elements of the subject matter with some considerable amount of development without taking out original explicit details of the subject matter. And when it comes to the themes of different paintings in mural culture, the inclusion of socio-economic context is very important. According to several resources, we found that Danagirigala temple, the cave shrine, has very important specific reasons to focus for further studies actually. Because when it comes to the geography point of view, it has a very interesting geospecific characteristic because of the thick vegetation in the Sabaragamu region. In most of the mural paintings, we can see a lot of expressions throughout the area, and it is very important when it comes to the routines of the habitats also, because we can see a lot of evidences from the mural paintings that incorporate the lifestyle of the real world, things more than imaginary aspects in the temple painting culture. And this information must be very informative and useful for further research also to adapt them in instruction about visual communication and communication design aspects. We have came up with a set of factors to further studies these kind of factors, the identification of the element and what are the suppositive factors, and how to evaluate the complications with the reader and the element, and how the reader more reliable with the element, and what are the deviated natures of the components, and how they recall their memory parallel to the reading of the component, and the clarity, scale and layers of the component, and also finally the focal gravity when it comes to the perception of the people, and what are the elements that dominate in memory as well. This is the holistic view of the complete painting, which is found in the inner south wall of Danagiri cave shrine. You can see a lot of flora and fauna is there. Actually, scholars have identified lots of variations of the plants like Moonamal, Thala, mango, arecanut, and lots. It's a very impressive work of art. We focus here on Kitul tree. Specifically, we were interviewed a set of participants through a guided questionnaire, especially with this reconstructed image of the specific mural element. Our intention was to understand the different states of those above mentioned communicative factors in between the visual abstraction, means the work of art, and how the perception happens and what are the responses to the perception as well. So the first case, we tried to identify the elements or the components of the mural work. So we can see there are a collection of leaves and the petioles, the sheath, crown. Crown means the collection of fronds, and the front means the collection of leaves, and the scars, trunks, and some additional elements like pots. Here, the initial graphical structural analysis showed us some key points, the proper use of natural proportions within, and some major vertical segments you can see, and different asymmetric characteristics, and also how the line work help in the textured and 3D development of the work, and also different relative proportion within the element, like the overall trunk formation and also to the formation of the leaves. Here, when it comes to the identification of the element, a majority of people identified it as a Kitul tree, but there were a competitive misconception that drags towards the palmyra tree as well. But we have to remember that the study was initially without any explanation about the subject matter. Master silhouette was one of the most powerful things we have found that works very well because of its minimum deviation in the holistic form. Then some of the illustration in the painting, like pots, fronds and trunks, mainly the pots, fronds and trunks, were the most highlighting supportive factors with the responses from the participants. And here, what are the complications when they read the visual art? Then we could see a lot of shapes were in some kind of a misconception, but mainly it was focused on the formation of the crown and also formation of the fronts. Then they were more reliable with the characteristic details of the drawing. And some of the misconceptions we could figure out by this study about the diversions of the element, like the leaves of the crown, that means the collection of fronds and the crown and the trunk. So that up to this stage, this study helped us to understand the diverted nature of the different shapes, actually, special focus to fronds, crown, and also to the trunk. Then when we go further into the study, we can see that here we can see a different comparison with other species of the palm type, because the memory elicitation helped them to think about different similarities like coconut and palmyra versions, and you can see in the above different types, the three types of front formation, the coconut, palmyra, and the Kitul tree in these similar paintings. Here, these factors actually help positively in the identification of the element, clarity, scale, and the layers. So the participants were very comfortable with this element. Finally, the focal gravity and the domination on the memory. Here, actually, the both factors gave some similarities, special focusing onto the pots and collection of leaves, and also to the overall mood of the crown. So when it comes to the key findings, here we go. There are 5 specific positive impacts, like the master silhouette, the use of key elements such as pots, the representation of the front and some trunk details, and also the socio-economic references in foliage paintings like tapping toddy likewise, and if the use of non-anatomical components of the tree were very successful and effective. And finally, we can see there's an iconic style in this representation of art when it comes to this kind of realistic, expressive scenarios. And only the one challenge we were noticed was the application of simplified nature of foliage patterns. That means the shapes of the leaves and the fronds. So here we can sum up my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Praneeth. And now we move on to the last presentation of this session, session 1A. Presenter is Nirasha Herath, and the research is co-authored by Situmini Ratnamalala. The topic of the research is a study on the impact of logo color on consumer perception of brand personality in Sri Lanka. It's going to be an interesting presentation. Let me give a little time to talk about the author who is going to present here today. Nirasha Herath is a graduate of the Department of Integrated Design, Faculty of Architecture, University of Moratuwa. She specialized in media and communication design and currently works at Balmode Studio as a creative designer. The work presented here is part of her undergraduate final year dissertation, Impact of Logo Color on Consumer Perception of Brand Personality in Sri Lanka. Here, she examined how logo colors impact the brand personality perception of Sri Lankan consumers by exploring the brand personality traits people associate with logo colors. In the context of branding, during her leisure time, she travels, collect inspirations for her illustrations and for her design work. That's great. So let me warmly welcome Nirasha Herath to do her presentation.
Excuse me. I think this is a star. I think it's a star. It's star. Star. No, you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nirasha Herath. I'm from Department of Integrated Design, specializing in media and communication design. My research is based on the impact of logo color on consumer perception of brand personality in Sri Lankan context. So Sigmund Freud defined human personality as something dynamic, progressive, durable, and stable over time. brand personality has similar definition as a human personality. Consumers perceive brands as having personality traits similar to humans. Research indicates that a direct and indirect customer experience with the brands can create and fuel the brand personality. Brand personality is an important facet of a brand identity because it is an essential component to distinguish one brand from another. It supports the management and construction of the brands, and it is connected with the consumer purchase behavior because consumers buy products from the brands that reflect their personality. So attributing personality traits to a brand provides consumers with something alive and authentic to relate to instead of just a generic offering. So ACR's brand personality framework is the pioneer brand personality measuring framework in brand personality research. This framework is developed considering the Big Five personality factor model, which was initially developed to describe the personalities of human beings. ACR's brand personality scale is constructed on 5 dimensions: sincerity, sophistication, ruggedness, competence, and excitement, and followed by 15 facets and 42 personality traits. When considering the brand personality, it is generated and sustained by product-related attributes like product category, packaging design, logo, name, price, and other physical attributes, and non-product related attributes like user imagery, employees, celebrity endorsers, and culture. Visual identity is such a crucial medium to directly or subliminally create meanings and convey the personality traits of the brands to the consumers. So to describe the relationships of the main components of my research, color is the most prominent cognitively influential variable to humans, and logo is the symbol that distinguishes a brand from other brands and the tool that conveys the intended characteristics of the brand personality to the consumers. That way, I identified the logo and the logo color as crucial mediums to convey brand personality to the consumers. When we talk about the color, to humans, the most prominent cognitively influential variable is color, and it is remembered easier than shapes and detected 3 times faster. So selecting the color of a brand is as important as choosing a name, because color's inherent meaning becomes dominant to brand identity. Therefore, in branding, color is an essential element for communication, and color is referred to as silent salesperson for its persuasive power at a subliminal level. So in brand identity design, colors influence consumers' perception of the brand, communicate the brand's personality traits, influence consumers' decision making, and impact consumers' affect cognition and behavior. For this particular reason, there is a need to understand how consumers perceive logo colors to create more meaningful, relevant logos for a brand to communicate its intended values. Therefore, my research problem was to understand how Sri Lankan consumers perceive brand personality through logo colors. To find that, first I needed to identify the logo color usage of Sri Lankan brands, and then identify associated values, meanings, and personality traits of each color in the context of branding globally, and finally identify how logo colors influence the brand personality perception of local adult consumers. First, I analyzed 100 brand logos according to the annual report on the most valuable and strongest Sri Lankan brands as of 2021. And map them according to colors. So these brands are from 12 sectors such as retail, building materials, financial services, beverages, food and healthcare, and etc. I identified that among Sri Lankan most valued brands, these colors are the most prominently used. Blue 33%, red 21%, black 12%, green 8%, orange 8%, yellow 7%, and other colors 11%. And then I reviewed previous studies to identify the associated meanings of those colors. Previous studies have underlined these personality dimensions and meanings linked to hues, and this is the summary of those associations. These findings are associated with the Western context and international consumers. So contextual influence on color associations can affect the consumer's perception of the brand personality. Because of that, when it comes to the local context, Sri Lankan consumers can perceive certain brand personalities from different colors than global consumers. There is a lack of research existing into how Sri Lankan consumers perceive brand personality through widely used colors in the brand logos, and this study is to investigate that. So this study used a deductive approach by first developing a hypothesis based on previous research on how colors relate to brand personality perception of the logos, and then quantitative data is gathered to examine, to check the validity of the hypothesis. Brand personality is measured according to the ACUS brand personality scale. This research investigated the relationship between two variables, logo color and brand personality. Then recognized statistical data patterns to determine the relationship with variables. Quantitative research methods is used with surveys consisting of closed questions because this method improves the consistency of the responses. And when analyzing and comparing the answers to prove the hypothesis, the answers could be analyzed statistically. I use these colors, which are red, yellow, blue, green, orange, and black, hues for this study, and all these colors were transformed into RGB color system because the survey was conducted online and viewed on digital screens, and digital screens display RGB color system. For this study, I designed a new logo to prevent the effects of recognizability, familiarity, and cultural association with the logo design. And previous studies have suggested that the shape of the logo can impact consumer perception. For instance, circular shapes are perceived differently compared to angular shapes. Therefore, an abstract logo design was designed with both circular and angular effects to neutralize the impact of logo shape on consumer perception. After being exposed to the fictitious logos with the colors, I asked respondents to evaluate their attitudes toward the color of the logo. This method was adapted from previous similar research. Written instructions were given to the respondents before the questions describing the concept of brand personality. Respondents were given the option to rate the appropriateness of each personality trait considering the stimuli on 5-point scale. I used a 5-point scale because accuracy, validity, and reliability is higher in multiple composite responses than single item responses. For sampling, I used a self-selection sampling method from the non-probability sampling technique because this research needs respondents who are willing to devote time to the survey, more detail-oriented with a considerable amount of English and digital literacy, thoughtful when examining and interpreting the logo element presented to them. After that, I defined dependent and independent variables as ACUS brand personality scale and independent variables as logos. As for the responses, 50 responses were acquired for blue, yellow, red, green, orange, and black colors. 50 responses consisted of 48 female, 50 male, and 2 respondents identified themselves as gender fluid. Average age for the respondents were 18 to 35 years. Through the color-blind test and having previous association with the logo, I had to eliminate 12 responses from the analysis. As you can see, after the total sample size was determined as 38, data from those samples were used for further descriptive statistical analysis, and this is the summary of the descriptive analysis. Mean value greater than 3 is considered appropriate. The findings indicated that Sri Lankan consumers with the average age category of 18 to 34 mostly associate blue color with the competence dimension. Sincerity and excitement dimensions are also associated with the blue color. Yellow color is mainly associated with sincerity dimension, also excitement dimension. Red color is primarily associated with competence personality dimensions. Green color is mainly associated with the sincerity dimension, and also competence, excitement and sophistication dimensions are associated with the green color. Unlike previous findings in the global context, in the local context, orange color is mainly associated with the sincerity dimension. Finally, black color is primarily associated with the rugged personality dimension. Also, competence and excitement dimensions are associated with black color. Contrary to the previous findings, black color was not associated with sophistication dimension. Therefore, the contrast between local and global findings is that red, blue, yellow, and green colors are similar to the global associations, and black, orange colors are different to the local context when considering the previous findings. These insights can help brands and designers to determine the most effective and relevant colors to communicate the intended personality traits, brand values to the Sri Lankan consumers, which helps to build a strong consumer and brand relationships. As for the further studies, further investigations can lead to identify how different consumer groups attribute personality traits in different contexts of branding, since this study only focused on local colors. Through further studies, we can determine the why factor regarding the contrasting color attributes. And conclusion, this is the conclusion, and thank you.
Thank you, Nirasha. It's a really nice scientific research. So now we are moving to the Q&A session. So now I would like to invite our presenters. Please come forward, and probably we can take these chairs to up here and answer some questions one by one. Please take a seat. Right. Thank you so much. So let's start with the first presentation, right? Just to recall the presentation, the topic was role of, is he online with us right now? The first presenter, is it online right now? No, right? Okay, let's go ahead with the second presentation while he might join online, right? So the second one is causative factors for the acceptance of denim as a clothing fashion by Sri Lankan consumers. Authored by Kavisha Munasinghe and co-authored by Ruandika Senanayake. First, I would like to open up the microphone for the audience. Right? If you have any questions, you can, speak it up. So the research was about, just to recall your memory, like denim, and we heard about a company called LICC. Right, and there was a framework, right? You had a framework or something to design to contextualize denim as a fashion site for Sri Lanka, right? Do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah. The intention of having this kind of right? Intention of having this kind of a discussion is, engage with the discussion. You are design students, most of you are design students. Please engage. So there are really nice research that we had in here. So if you had any questions related to the subject matter, related to the methodology, related to the framework, research framework that they have followed, it is time for you to ask some questions. I also have one question. So, yes, my question. Do you have any? Please raise your hand if you have any. You have. Excellent. No? That's okay. Right. I have one question for you, especially, so you have done a really nice study, right? So have you thought about the market aspects, right? Especially your main focus was the local industry, right? When it comes to a business, like we have a really tiny amount of users, especially when it comes to a specific material of denim, right? So have you thought about the market aspects? Any, yeah, about the Sri Lanka, or so you can think of like regional, like similar kind of settings in maybe in the South Asian region. Have you thought about that kind of a study?
Yes, yeah. In order to cover that aspect, the reason I included the marketeer's perspective to my analytical framework is on that reason. By understanding and studying through the interviews, the actions and steps that renowned brand like LICC has taken, I was able to understand the specific market aspects and how they have made effort to market their products using different promotional methods and other tactics. In my study, I have descriptively studied about that and has analyzed that. So I think I have covered that aspect. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. And yeah, that's okay. But I would like to suggest you, like, just think about in numbers, like how many users are there, what's the revenue, like expected revenue, is it really worth it to go into that kind of investment like that? So if you haven't done that kind of a study, probably that could be your next research, right?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful presentation, right? That's a really wonderful presentation. Next, let's move on to the third presentation, variable Sinhala typeface towards responsive design, an exploration presented by Satira Pereira, co-authored by Dr. Sumanthi Samaravikramam. So, audience, do you have any questions? It was a wonderful study. Yes.
Hello, Satira. So I am really excited to see your presentation, as this is an area that I was also very interested at. I think we got the opportunity to, we had the discussion previously as well. So I saw that you have come across a long way after our discussion, and I'm really happy to see your progress as well. My question is, you have experimented on, from changing from letter to letter, letter to word, with the variables coming in and all that. But I'm looking at the future when I'm asking you this question. Sri Lanka is a multilingual country, and most of the problems we have with our typefaces is when we are using those, we have to use whatever the communication that we are trying to communicate in all our languages. We have to represent everything in all our languages. But I see great opportunity in variable fonts where we can switch between languages within a short space, right? So have you done any experiments towards that area, or do you see a future where you can develop this, what you have found out, into a technology like that, or an opportunity like that?
First of all, thank you for the question. And so, as future development, we can use, because it's very easy to use languages like English. They are Latin typefaces and they don't have much visual variations in the anatomy. But when it comes to languages like Tamil, it has like lot of visual variations. So here I have developed a framework which I can apply that to any language, and I don't think it's that hard to make any language into a variable typeface using this framework. This is a very basic but framework, but it can apply to any language with large user variations. But I didn't, in this project, I didn't do any experiment with other languages because it's a long process, to be honest. But as you mentioned, it's 100% possible. And like we can use this, and also this is a display font. So this is to use in headings, etc. So we can 100% like turn like Tamil fonts into variable typefaces and change from one language or Sinhala to Tamil, then Tamil to English, and English to again Sinhala or vice versa. It's not a hard process with the framework IDR. Does that answer your question? Or? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I was just wondering whether you tried out any word formations within those typefaces, using those typefaces, and were there any sort of, say, spacing problems or any issues, related issues?
So, again, thank you for the question. So, when I started the project, one of the issues that I had was there are a lot of vowels in our Sinhala alphabet. It's not like English, like letter to letter translation. We have vowels which get in middle of the, like letters. So that's why I needed the grid. So when it's inside the grid, it doesn't matter what's come. It doesn't matter. It's the thickness of the letter. Sorry, the width of letter, and whether it's there's vowels or anything. So in the experiment, I tried out. That's why I started from the bottom, like where I experimented letter to letter transitions, then letter to 2 words, letter to 4 words, etc. Then when I finished that phase, I move on to the vowels, adding vowels, and like change from 1 letter to 2 letters with vowels, etc. So when it's inside a grid, it really doesn't matter because I am like disconnecting letters anatomically. So vowels, like when it comes to vowels, so letters with like larger widths, still we can disconnect them anatomically and use like the same transition. Did that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for that presenter? No? So I also have one last question for you. Maybe it's not a question actually. So animation was part of your research, right? Animating those characters one into the second one. So right now what we could see is only one type of an animation, right? One way. It's really monotonous. Have you thought about, bringing emotions, evoking emotions through animation? Because have you come across the dot 10 line, the animation, and also the 12 principles of animation of the Disney? So have you thought about these sides?
Well, to be honest, in the early process of my project, there was a phase where I had to like try out different transition methods. For example, from like changing the opacity, but this is like a linear transformation. But I did thought about it, but for the example, if we think about the opacity changing, those are already existing. And here in this project, I wanted to do something that is not actually that you have seen, as well as there are a lot of like limitation when we come to the this type of framework, like grid or framework. So this was the most suitable and the most easiest way to transform one from one letter to another letter. Plus, also we could use color changes. So for example, one word may in green, and that word can change into another word, but changing the color. those possibilities you can do like without any problem. So yeah, did I?
Yes, maybe in future research you
Yes,
can explore that direction. That's great. Anyway, it was a wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for that. So now it's the fourth presentation, communicative factors in visual abstraction of a Kithul tree in an 18th century mural paintings of Sri Lanka, presented by Mr. Pranith Pereira and co-authored by Ms. Melanie Disanayake. Do you have any questions about that presentation? Anything about that presentation? Nobody wants to raise questions? Oh, Madam is there, right? Okay, no worries. I have one question. Yeah. Yep. So, Mr. Praneeth, so in your study, so you have, so, you know, the natural, like original painting was there, but when you come to your analysis, to the study, you have abstracted that, right? In that way, don't you lose the originality of the art piece? And also, is it, I think it is really affecting the validity of findings. Do you have anything to add?
Actually, sir, to a certain level, yes, I can accept that. But the problem was that that painting, the original one, was a bit not that much clear to the view, right? Some of the elements were difficult to reconstruct back again. That's why we had to come up with a solution how to give a holistic idea about at least the elements of the artwork. Like then they can understand what is the trunk, what is the leaves, likewise at least. That's why we had to construct to a certain level. But all the proportion, everything were traced exactly according to the exact original painting, yes.
Yeah, but anyway, the color theme is changed.
Yes, there are
line
severe
weights.
challenges we had, yes.
Yes. And yeah, probably, yeah, let's stop in over there. So do you have any questions about that one? So we can move into the next presentation. Madam, do you have anything to add?
Just to add that it was not a major research project.
All right.
It was only a community project which we have. We only had a very few allocated hours, and therefore we had to restrict the whole project to a certain limit. That is the reason why I mean there were other aspects, for example, colors and so on. Like we could have done those things, but we did not because we had to restrict the time.
Okay, that's right. That means the project continues, research continues. That's great. Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Praneeth, and
you.
also Madam. Right. Let's move into the last presentation. Study on the impact of logo color on consumer perception of brand personality in Sri Lanka, presented by Nirasha Herath and co-authored by architect Situmini Ratanamalala. Do we have any questions about that presentation? Any questions? Just think about, you know, the facts, like the discipline, methodology, the way they, you know, conduct the experiment, findings, how they analyzed, synthesized. Nothing? Perfect, right? Again, former HOD, right? I know that. Right. Okay, I have one question. Right. My question is, so you have a lot of colors, right, in your presentations. Like, a lot of colors means like the primary colors and secondary colors. And also you came up with meanings for those colors, right? So from where did you get these meanings? What's the source?
Yeah, the research was about that. First, I reviewed the existing researches that were about the meaning of the colors, and those were on the global context. And this research was not just meanings but personalities that people attribute with the colors. Like, it's not the meanings but the personality traits that people attribute with the colors. So I use surveys and then gather data and then analyze them and analyze the statistical data and use descriptive analysis, and from the mean values I identified the attributed personality traits, personality dimensions of those colors. And the framework was Acres Personality Dimension Framework. So according to that, those colors, those personality traits, dimensions were attributed to those colors that I selected.
So you mean that, you know, those given personalities, those meanings are not really, it's like global. It's not
No.
really culture, context specific, is it?
Previous findings were global, from the global audience. So my research was to find what Sri Lankan consumers attribute, what personalities Sri Lankan consumers attribute to those colors.
But at the end, you have selected the same set of colors, excluding 2 colors, right?
Yeah, I selected the colors according to the usage. Like those colors were the mostly used colors in Sri Lankan logos.
Right. Maybe probably you can further a little bit.
Further we can research on different colors, saturations, hues.
Saturation and also attributions based on the cultural, because right now we are not really considering Sri Lankan, you know, context and context specific meanings for those colors when they assigned.
Yeah, it's a general
meanings. Yes. It's a general and it is quite vibrant, right? The whole word is quite vibrant, different cultures, like we are just borrowing those meanings. Probably we just need to a little bit contextualize and, you know, extend your research in the next phase. That's great. Right, so those are my comments, and now I think we can wind up the session. And thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. Give them a warm clap. Thank you, guys.
A very big thank you to the session chair as well, Dr. Kamal Vasala. Shall we give him a round of applause as well? I think he handled the session expertly and very, very professionally, so thank you very much indeed. We do like to invite Dr. Kamal to please come forward, as we have some certificates to be presented to our speakers and presenters here today. Before that, we would like to say a very big thank you to Rajendra Shinde as well, who presented earlier on from India. So thank you very much for taking part in the first ever IDR 2022. It was really a pleasure to have you. And the first certificate to our local presenters, I would like to present a certificate to Ms. Kavisha Munasinghe for her presentation on causative factors for the acceptance of denim as a clothing fashion by Sri Lankan consumers. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. And next, I would like to invite Sathira Pereira to please come forward for his presentation on variable Sinhala typeface towards responsive design and exploration. It was really nice to listen to you, and it was a very, very interesting presentation indeed. Thank you very much. And next, certificate goes out to Praneeth Pereira. We would like to call you forward, please, for his presentation on communicative factors in visual abstraction of a kithul tree in an 18th century mural painting of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for your presentation, Praneeth, as well. And the final presentation for this particular session, we would like to invite Nirasha Herath to please come forward for your presentation on a study on the impact of logo color on consumer perception of brand personality in Sri Lanka. So let's give a big round of applause to all the presenters and the session chair, Dr. Kamal Vasala. Thank you very much for taking part. And that actually concludes the first session of the inaugural Integrated Design Research Conference 2022 of the scientific sessions, actually. So I think we are right on time, 5 minutes early, actually. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, madam, and come back for session 2. Oh, no break. Sorry. So we're going to start the second session, and I would like to invite the event chair, Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama, to please come forward to introduce our next chair, Mrs. Ruandika Senanaika. Thank you very much, and we look forward to some interesting presentations coming up in session 2 as well. Thank you.
Well, it is an honor to introduce our session chair, Ms. Ruandika Senanaika, so as a senior lecturer and also fashion and media, fashion and lifestyle coordinator. So I will give it over to you and for us to start the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sumantri. I warmly welcome you all again for the session B of the IDR conference, day 1. So we have, in the program, we have 5 presentations, but due to unavoidable reasons, we had to move one presentation for tomorrow. That will be the 3rd one. So therefore, there will be only 4 presentations coming on for this session. So we have the first presentation by Professor Kumkum Nadig and Nirat Alwa. The research is titled as Art Against Spectacle, Art and Design as a Response to Culture as a Perceptible Communication. If I give a brief introduction to the authors, Kumkum Nadig is a visual communication designer and educator with a unique multifaceted design background. Kumkum approaches her work and interests through a multidisciplinary ability to address a design issue as her education spans architecture, industrial design, and graphic design. Kumkum brings with her over 35 years of multinational experience as a design professional and 20 years of teaching experience in India and Canada. Currently, she is the Dean of Visual Communication Programs at Sri Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology, India. A brief introduction about co-author. Nirat Alwa is an award-winning television journalist, producer, anchor and director with over 30 years of TV production, direction and executive producing experience across all genres, from big-ticket reality to blue-chip documentary to magazine format and kids programming and drama. So I warmly welcome Professor Kumkum Nadig to present their research. Thank you. I believe it will be a recorded presentation.
I'm Nirat Alva. I'm part of the faculty at Sri Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bangalore, India. Here, I come from a television background, production, direction, filmmaking. Here, I facilitate learning by creating dynamic real-world environments through workshops, through projects, through studios for students to be exposed to real-world circumstances, and in a way preparing them for the creative industries that they will go into after they leave college.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kumkum Nadig, faculty at Sri Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology at Bangalore. I've been at Sri since 20 years now. I was also responsible for framing the visual communication design programs at Sri at both undergraduate and postgraduate level. Currently, I head visual communication design courses at UG and PG level, and I divide my time in managing faculty in my programs and teaching and engaging students in studios and projects. Nirat and I are thankful to Team IDR for inviting us to present our paper. It is unfortunate that by the time we learned about our paper being accepted, For this conference, we had made other plans, and we therefore could not be present in Colombo to be with you all. We hope that this presentation will do justice in explaining our work. I will now share my screen so that we can begin our presentation.
Yeah, our project was born when I went over Guy Debord's book, Society of the Spectacle. I was riveted by how relevant it was to our present time and certainly to the present generation. Because I'm a filmmaker, I felt I needed a collaborator from the design side, and I went across to Kumkum and asked whether she would like to collaborate on this project. Kumkum, over to you.
When Niret introduced Guy Debord's book to me, I found it to be one of the most influential book I had ever come across. At the same time, I also realized how uncannily relevant Debord's ideas and philosophy were to our current times. When one reads the book now, more than 60 years after its first publication, one cannot help but be amazed at how aptly it relates to our image-saturated lives today, as mediated by cell phones, social media, and consumer culture. But Debord's philosophy addresses far more complex ideas than just the effects of media and consumerist society. However, it was important for us to make sure that we frame this as a context in a way that undergraduate level students find it inspiring as well as relatable. The time allotted for this presentation is too short to present each and every process engagement that Niret and I took our students through to deepen their understanding of the context. Similarly, time is also too short to include all 26 projects here. So we have identified 7 different projects by students of different specializations to elaborate. The cover features a much reproduced photograph from post-war America and a trans cinema audience, all wearing 3D glasses in virtually trance-like state of absorption. The image by J.R. Ehrman was clicked in an auditorium during the premiere screening of the first 3D film Bhavana Devil in 1952. A section of this full image of the spectators in the auditorium was then cropped and used for the cover of Guy Debord's book for the edition of 1983 by Black and Red Publishers, Detroit. This image has since become a veritable cliché for the alienation caused by late consumer culture. Looking at the cover image now, it is so easy to relate to the picture on the right of the archetypal modern crowd squeezed up against each other, mesmerized by the spectacle as they look intently at the blinking screens they hold in their hands.
Yeah. To sharpen the fault lines and inspire an ideological on the project, we divided our class into randomly assigned teams with the idea of getting a debate underway. The proposition was, this house believes where modern conditions of production prevail, all life is a spectacle. So on this screen, if you can see the various, this is like a summary of the arguments that the students brought to the table. It was very intensely argued and fought. And we then asked them to create a collage of the takeaway from the debate on the walls of our workshop, and to also submit a reflective note on what they felt at the end of this debate.
Having engaged with Debord's text, ideas, and propositions, students began their journey into articulation of how relevant Debord's ideas are in their current lives. The text made them question, examine, and extrapolate their situation, actions, and value systems through a set of words which were then translated into visuals. Each student took a word inspired from the book and created 3 visualizations each and every day for a period of 8 weeks, adding to a collection of thousands of visuals. The Society of the Spectacle is a critique of contemporary consumer culture and commodity fetishism, dealing with issues such as class alienation, cultural homogenization, and mass media. Some of the visuals we present here demonstrate the learner's understanding of Debord's ideas and propositions in relation to their own lives, values, and culture. Feelings of fragmentation, of being surrounded by and entrenched in consumer culture, of being blinded by appearances, and thus losing the ability to look at what is real and authentic. Hyperreality is essentially layering of visuals, thus altering the very fabric of our surroundings. Simulations of reality is visualized through varied layers of lettering and images. We no longer experience the world as it is, but through various lenses altering one another. We cannot but relate this to social media and the white noise of the online life. Debord's statement on how, behind the masks of total choice, different forms of the same alienation confront each other is represented very aptly through this collection of visuals. Excuse me. Role of advertising and consumer culture, a consumer economy, has a huge role to play in fetishizing reality. The distraction and pressure causes alienation, affects sense of self-worth, drawing one's attention and values limited to the world of appearances, causing fragmentation of views, values, and delusion.
Yeah. This quotation is perhaps the key focus of the project. Representation, appearance, externals are the medium through which individuals have started communicating with each other. You post the best picture of yourself at an aspirational do. Your pictures indicate you are special, you were invited, that you look good, that you hung around with well-known people. Your inner state could be troubled, stressed, and a host of other states of being could be manifesting within you, but that doesn't matter. It's the outward manifestation that you are concerned with.
We present one of the first project of the 7 that we wish to feature here. This is Mansa Chitlangia's project. Mansa's project responds to Debord, where he says, in this millennial generation, we are the product and we are the victim of this brand identity federation. Being is replaced by having, and having is replaced by appearing. No one can refute that we are the flag bearers of consumerism. Advertisement shops, sale deals, creating illusion of incessant need. Mansa created a book where each spread of the book was a visual commentary that played in a satirical manner on the idea of consumerism and its effects, not only on the self, but also the abuse of environment and exploitation of human rights. In short, Mansa's visuals enhance Debord's notes on consumerism, commodity fetishism, the price of consumerism, reliance on social media for self-worth, and the loss of identity in the race to stay current through appearances.
So we spend so much time talking about those perfect pictures, those seemingly perfect people in apparently perfect settings in convincingly aspirational apparel. We spend so much time getting those pictures of the beach, sunset, mountain, and ourselves right that we never really embrace the potential of an authentic experience of a location firsthand through our senses, through contemplation, and yes, paradoxically, through witnessing and detachment. The spectacle is not a collection of images, but a social relation among people mediated by images. The projects that follow this quotation are somehow linked to this understanding of Guy Debord.
So here is Anushka Garg's project. She highlights the loss of the authentic, leading to fragmented consciousness, which in turn affects one's value system. Awareness of the consciousness breaks the hypnotic state that one is living in and makes one question their goals, conscience, and morals in a world where one is addicted to various forms of spectacles, moving blindly from one spectacle to another, enabling one's sense of self, and awareness of one's consciousness has become truly sacred. The installation created by Anushka is a representation of the spectacular society and insights gained from people on the various forms of visual saturation, symbolizing different value systems affected by the spectacle. It is a form of communication addressed to different parts of the fragmented brain. The series of postcards are messages that remind us of the subtle ways in which the spectacle draws us in without us being consciously aware.
Yeah, Anjali Vichare chose fantasy as the focus of her project. You can see some of the sketches and her work here. And, you know, she triggered her exploration with the idea of a male bird who puts on a dance performance to attract a mate. It is to secure the future of his kind. So Anjali feels all our lives are nothing short of a series of performances that have been in practice and evolving through culture for years and have been mapped out for every newborn to swear by. So, so the quotation from Guy Debord is something that was her provocation, breaking one's life down into a series of poses chosen more or less unconsciously from the range of dominant stereotypes. Now, she goes on to explain that we are born with desires without which the future would cease to exist. It is this desire that encourages us to stage performances. Failure to fulfill a desire leads to suffering and forces us into a fantasy land that sells us new desires or a new way of living. And it's an endless cycle that promises a romanticized version of reality to numb the pain. Every person has their own version of this fantasy where they play the central role and continue to impose that on others to secure their own future. And so Anjali's final project was a take on fantasy, and the provocation was once again Guy Debord.
Next, we would like to talk about Neha Balchandra's project. She created a magazine called Société. Société magazine is a collection of the spectacles and a spectacle in itself. It displays a world of commodities and qualities as if we live in a utopic world, where spaces are perfectly symmetrical and faces are free of blemish. The text and content are focused on how things should be rather than how they are. Magazines today have a nasty habit of making its consumer feel lesser than, wherein after consuming its content, we are forced to feel as if our clothes aren't fashionable enough, nor is our home perfectly furnished. It preaches a life where the highest form of capitalism systematically influences our idea of perfection, perfect objects, perfect people, perfect places. This outcome is a mockery, or rather a complete distortion of this utopic display, where the content baffles you with its imperfections.
Avani Babar, an animation student, in fact, she was very, very conscientious in her exploration. It was so wide-ranging and involved reading so many books and checking out so many films that we were worried about what her final output would be. But she zeroed in finally on an egg and made this beautiful film. It's a multi-medium animated journey of an egg to a safe space where it can be acknowledged as a life instead of merely a commodity. The world of the commodity, again, a quotation from Guy Debord, is thus shown for what it is because its development is identical to people's estrangement from each other and from everything they produce. Now, Avani went deep into the world of commodity, finding it a strange place where it leads us to believe that we need material objects to satisfy our pseudo needs. So she believes that by indulging in this world, one starts looking at life from the lens of commodity. Everything becomes a commodity, including life itself. So she used animal agriculture as the focus to tell this story. Jumana was a furniture design student, and she's become a furniture designer now. And she struggled with how her project would play out, given that essentially she was one who designed unique, perfect furniture for consumer use. So she had to struggle with this contradiction. And finally, she decided to create a shop window kind of feel with furniture specially created that was a take on the spectacle. So basically, she use the quotation, the spectator feels at home nowhere, for the spectacle is everywhere. Her idea was to be intriguing and thought-provoking by creating surrealistic furniture as a medium, to produce objects that were not conventional and get people to think about why they've been made. And her reflective notes on the side would help you understand what her project was all about. So essentially, this is Jumana's take on Society of the Spectacle through the making of furniture.
So now Debord seems to be pointing at the Industrial Revolution, where in this quote, where in its early phase, manufacturing reduced each and every product to being banal, lacking originality and excitement. Adisha's project that I would like to talk about next responds to this quote of Debord in an imaginative manner as she focuses on her capabilities as a learner of textile design to create a range of weaves that are as far away from being banal as can be. The premise of Adisha's work is based on the proposition that manufacturing is not making. Making demands a dissolution of sorts of one's environment, where the awareness and consideration of one's environment does not equate taking it for granted as a default presence. The 6 textile frames encapsulate her engagement in a practice that deconstructs the standards of industrial manufacturing. Her project thus inquires into the metamorphosis of the process of making once the reins of mass production are let loose. What Adisha has done is that she has crafted a non-commodity which exposes the perpetual fetishizing of anything tangible by instantly assigning utility and value to it. Thus, you can see that she has engaged in a practice that requires one to step out of a system fueled by capitalism. This brings us to the end of the 7 projects that we wanted to discuss and present to you. And now, in conclusion, I would hand it over to Niret.
Yeah, our project lasted for 5 months and ended with a public exhibition in an art gallery in Bangalore's CBD. Public response was heartening. It included not just parents and students, but journalists, other artists, and members of the public. Each student created a space to display their work and answered questions from visitors about their project. What we have presented today is only a small part of the depth, the variety, and uniqueness of 26 individual projects. Our presentation is only a minor spectacle of a spectacular student response to Society of the Spectacle. It was an original play scripted and executed by a contemporary art practice student with her friends. There were short films made by a student that parodied wedding videos and so much more. Over the past few years, after we completed the project, we can see how pervasive the spectacle has become. Images are manipulated, fakes created, riots instigated, people bombarded with false narratives. Some say we are living in a post-truth era. Facts don't matter anymore. The loudest image and most aggressive voice gets heard.
Having exposed our final year students to Debord's philosophies, we had no idea that this journey would prove to be so powerful and affect all of us so deeply. All 26 students who signed up for this project were equally moved and engaged with the project with all their sincerity. The students came from a variety of specializations, such as animation, visual communication, furniture design, textile design, film, and information arts. We have found this context to be ever present and ever relevant, not only to our lives, but also to our students' journey as learners of art and design. Come to think of it, design especially can be seen as a major player in creating and manifesting the spectacle. Having exposed our students to think of and find ways to face this spectacle without getting lost and consumed by it, we feel we have done our small bit to bringing awareness and an ability so that they could become conscious designers. We thank you for your patience through this online presentation. And if possible, Niret and I will be happy to take questions or comments now. Thank you.
Very much.
Bye.
Kumkum, congratulations. That was great in one flow.
Hello. That was a lovely presentation. It would have been great if we had them physically at the conference, because I'm sure it's a good learning for the students and a good, very interesting project for us as educators as well. Okay, next we will move to the second presentation. It's on a comparison between Laksala packaging and gift and souvenir packaging, authored by Ms. Tarindi Tilakaratna and co-authored by Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama. A small introduction about the presenter. Tarindi Tilakaratna has recently graduated from the Bachelor of Design, specialized in media and communication design from the Department of Integrated Design, University of Moratuwa. She currently works as a graphic designer and hopes to get more exposure in the packaging design field in the future. I invite Tarindi to do your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening to all of you. Today I am here to present my research about the comparison between Laksala packaging and gift and souvenir packaging. The content of the presentation is the introduction, research problem and research question, research aim and objectives, methodology, results and findings, and the conclusion. I think most of you have heard about Laksala, which is the one and only gift and souvenir boutique under the operation of Sri Lankan government. And it offers a vast range of craft and non-crafted products from all over the country. The main intention of hosting Laksala was to introduce local and international marketing opportunities to the local craft community. And 90% of Laksala customers can be identified as tourists who are attracted to high quality products. Laksala contains more than 500 product categories and displays more than 12,000 products in all over the Laksala branches. Laksala brings all kinds of handicrafts and products from all over the country and provides valuable sustenance and exposure to the traditional craft. These craft and non-crafted products, which means gift and souvenirs, are a tangible part of the travel experience tourists gained in Sri Lanka. They buy these to evoke the memorable experiences they had in Sri Lanka or to gift them to their loved ones to share the values in Sri Lanka. These products have the ability to connect their home with our country. But these valuable products are handed over to tourists from wrapping from bubble wraps, newspapers, plastic wraps or craft papers, and put them into a single ply corrugated box according to the product properties. Then Laksala utilizes the product to customers through a craft bag, which is their tertiary packaging. This eco-friendly shopping bag was programmed in 2006 to promote the usage of eco-friendly bags as an alternative to polythene all over the country. This whole packaging method can be introduced as functional-based packaging method as it contains primary, secondary and tertiary packaging. According to literature, the primary goal of a gift and souvenir packaging is attracting tourists. Therefore, it is important to represent the culture in addition to basic functions as content, protection and transportation. This cultural representation can be reflected through developing packaging design elements. When we talk about graphic design, using script as a cultural element, illustrations and photographs inspired by culture, and using colors inspired by culture can be identified in gift and souvenir packaging. And when we talk about structure design, structure and form inspired by culture, using cultural materials, and a unique unboxing experience and surface inspired by traditional technology can be identified in gift and souvenir packaging. In addition to that, including the product information such as raw material, scent, and flavor, and also including the history and culture behind the product can be seen in gift and souvenir packaging. According to that, promoting local culture is missing in existing Laksala packaging. Sri Lanka has a rich cultural heritage and all of them are gathered into one place by Laksala. Therefore, they have a duty to promote Sri Lankan culture through their products and services. So I identified my research question as, why did Laksala come up with the functional based packaging concept rather than a cultural communication concept? The research aim. Packaging is the interface between the product and consumer when it comes to the purchasing decisions. It attracts tourists as when they purchase a craft, they are handed over with another product, which is the packaging. The packaging can be considered a souvenir itself, as many tourists tend to keep it to represent the country they visit. If the packaging can attract tourists and motivate them to buy gift or souvenirs, it can directly increase sales. If Laksala develop a new packaging design based on literature findings, it can introduce new opportunities to the local craft community in the range of gift and souvenir packaging. As well, Laksala can attract more tourists and create new marketing opportunities. My research objectives are to identify main elements of gift and souvenir packaging, to identify how do customers react to the Laksala packaging method, to identify how the existing packaging concept adapted to Laksala. The research study was conducted through mixed method approach. There were 4 main stages in methodology: observation, literature review, questionnaire survey, and the interview. When I went through literature review to identify the background, purpose, properties, and elements of gift and souvenir packaging, I could see Laksala packaging process is a contrast to that. After identifying the gap, a questionnaire survey was circulated to see whether the consumers too have identified the gap. Due to COVID-19 situation, the convincing sampling method was seen as the most appropriate sampling method for questionnaire survey. An online survey was conducted through TripAdvisor with Laksala buyers all over the world who have rated both negative and positive reviews. They were provided with a closed-ended questionnaire that was easy and quick to answer and that helped to collect simple and straightforward data. The questionnaire included identifying respondents' attitudes towards the gift and souvenir packaging and Laksala packaging. The questionnaire was distributed among 100 participants, but only 21 were responded back. Though it is a huge failure, it could be managed as the respondents were from all over the world. Then an interview was conducted with administrative officers of Laksala to identify how they came up with the existing packaging concept. An open-ended interview was conducted with 3 different departments, sales, operations, and finance management, to have different perspectives. According to the observation results, Laksala packaging method doesn't contain culturally inspired surface graphics and only contains their logo, the content details, and the packaging has the raw color of their packaging materials. Even though literature review explains the value of material in packaging, they have used materials which can damage the unboxing experience. Their material selection depends on product properties, salesmen's attitudes, and the Laksala branch guidelines. Basically, they are focusing on product protection, not the promotional part. Their secondary packaging doesn't include any graphics, but according to literature, the secondary packaging should motivate the customers in purchasing decisions. After this analysis, the survey questionnaire was analyzed to reconfirm the identify the gap from a customer point of view. Demographic data of participants shows that 38.1 are from Europe, 33.3 from Sri Lanka, 19 from Asia, 4.8 from America, 4.8 from Australia. The survey was conducted with both male and female participants who are in the age range of 20 to 60. The participants had visited Sri Lanka for business, leisure and creation and for visiting relatives and friends. Moreover, they have bought products from Luxala as gifts for their loved ones and for their personal use. According to the survey, 100% of them somehow buy gift and souvenirs while they travel. And 61.9% of the participants wish to see the gift and souvenir packaging as a narrative and imaginary representation of a culture. 42.9% of participants accepted that the gift and souvenir packaging affect in their purchasing decisions, while 38.1% of the participants said the packaging sometimes affect while buying their gift and souvenirs. The next graph shows 61.9% of the participants wished to have a better packaging before it went to the bag. In earlier questions, they responded they were willing to see cultural representation through the packaging, but what they were handed over was a wrapping and a cardboard box with a craft bag. So here it indicates that the respondents too have identified something missing in the existing packaging. This question was asked to determine in one aspect do the respondents wish to see the cultural representation. Here 61.9% preferred to see colors inspired by culture, then 22.9% wish to see cultural inspired material in the packaging. When buying gifts or souvenirs, it is important to know the background and the history of that product. It is proved here as 38.1% prefer to see history and product information in the packaging. After confirming that the customers also have identified the gap, the interview with Luxala officers was conducted to gain sensitive information about Luxala packaging criteria. The major reason was Luxala staff is not aware about the purpose of a gift and souvenir packaging. They haven't identified the requirements of a packaging category and the customer's expectations. They have selected the current packaging method according to their cost structure and to promote their brand through logo as their surface graphics. They manage their expenses through their income, therefore they don't wish to add more expenses to their budget. The officers have focused only about product safety and product handling, not about the aesthetic value. When I explained about gift and souvenir packaging, they were thinking this was only applicable in spices and tea. Even though they had a little knowledge about that area, they haven't put exposure to the craft sector. The results and findings can be summarized as this. No awareness about the area of the gift and souvenir packaging, the limited cost structure, only focused on product safety, and the packaging is manipulated only to the brand awareness. A gift and souvenir packaging acts as a cross-cultural communicator as it represents culture through surface graphics, materials, form and structure, and product information. But as a gift and souvenir boutique, Luxala practices a functional-based packaging method focused on product protection. The survey indicated tourists who wish to get back the tangible memories of the country they visit to identify this gap. Analysis of the interview with officers concluded less awareness of the packaging, limited cost structure, focusing only about product safety and brand promotion are the reason behind this gap. This is the end of my presentation. If you would like to know more about my research, you can ask during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarindi. We will move to the next presentation. It's the logical hierarchy of the front page layouts of the earliest Sinhala newspapers published in Sri Lanka, authored by Ms. Hansika Erandati and co-authored by Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama. A small introduction about the author. Hansika, author and the presenter. Hansika Erandati is a graduate from the Department of Integrated Design, University of Moratuwa. She is specialized in media and communication design and currently an MSc candidate at University of Moratuwa. The work presented here is part of her undergraduate final year research, the front page layouts of the earliest Sinhala newspapers published in Sri Lanka. Here she developed a logical hierarchical structure of earliest Sinhala newspapers as a contribution to Sinhala newspaper industry. Her aim was to document the tacit knowledge for the reference of the future generation. Hansika is passionate in research. She is interested in travels and records data through archives and resource persons. I warmly welcome Hansika to do the presentation.
Good evening everyone. I am Hansika Erandati from Department of Integrated Design, and my research is the logical hierarchy of the front page layout of earlier senior newspapers published in Sri Lanka. So, at the very first glance, Sri Lankan can identify what are these images. Using same font, overlapping text, logically we are not interested in reading actually, falling to consider the hierarchy of the page, complicated layout, repeating the layout pattern, the same layout pattern. These are indeed the modern single newspapers in Sri Lanka. And reading the newspaper involves a lot of eye movements and has a hierarchy. Continuous changes in visual focus are necessary for news reading, and these attentional shifts are accompanied by corresponding adjustments in gaze positions. So, is there a logical hierarchy in newspaper? Yes. A page of a newspaper has a logical and geometrical structure within its components. In 2002, Visa and Pins developed this structure to present the logical and geometrical structure of a newspaper in a hierarchical manner. Levels in this hierarchy describe the components of complexity of geometrical appearance of a newspaper page. So, in this moment, I got curious about the fact that how these graphical elements developed the single newspaper pages, because there is no recorded knowledge of theoretical and geometrical structure within the components of the single newspapers. So, therefore, we decided to analyze the pages of ancient single newspapers to proceed with my research. The history of the single newspapers publication industry can be divided into 3 stages. Considering the fact that first single newspaper was published in 1860s, the research was conducted by selecting the period of 1860s AD to 1900s. Therefore, the research problem is lack of documented knowledge about the graphical elements used by ancient layout designers to design the front page layouts of the earlier single newspapers. This research questioning how the graphical elements have developed the anatomy of earlier single newspapers, and the knowledge of this research will contribute to the today's layout patterns in single newspapers, since the aim of this research is to understand how the graphical elements have been applied to develop the front page layout of the earlier single newspapers and to document the knowledge to future references. According to the year of first publication, 79 single newspapers can be identified from the 1860s to 1900s. The author selected and examined 13 newspapers, microfilm scan copies of 29 single newspapers, collected through personal collector Dr. Sumantri Samaravikrama via National Archives of Sri Lanka. The visual analysis begins by summarizing the variables of the front page layouts. So these are the selected 13 newspapers and how the timeline was divided according to samples. And this is the conceptual framework. After selecting the samples, the conceptual framework was developed for the research as shown in this image. The components identified by the V's and pins are discussed as graphical elements, and the independence variables is the graphical elements, and dependent variables is the visual analysis of single newspaper front page layouts patterns from 1860s to the 1900s. After developing the framework, the research used a specific coding system to code the variables. There we have identified 16 variables as coded using English capital letters. For example, A for title piece, B for title, C for verse, D for folio line, E for horizontal separators, F for supportive illustrations, and likewise there are 16 coded variables as shown in this slide. These are the given images show how the codes used to categorize the newspapers that were selected samples. So then we started analyzing the variables one by one. Here both the literature and the research findings are discussing parallelly. So code A, newspaper title. Newspaper titles can be found in mastheads on the newspaper front pages of a newspaper, as well as into the folio, a line at the top of each subsequent page that includes a date, page number, and a section. The title pieces are extracted from the front pages and analyzed. The title is mainly bold and large, printed in both English and Sinhala languages. However, all the newspapers have a distinct decorative typeface which is used only for the titles of these single newspapers. The title is always in the center of the page, with the contents scattered broadly over the split columns. Pleasant and effective illustrations support the title piece. Every illustration is related to the title and represents what the newspaper stands for. So apart from the title, there are several components surrounding the title. This can be identified as a level or a section with sidebars, 4 stanzas, the date, and a specific supportive illustration for the title. Sidebars. A sidebar is a brief element that goes along with a lengthier story and is also a design element apart from the primary story. The title piece, which have 3 columns divided to unequal columns but equal with sidebars from the left and right sides, with the title appearing in the center of the middle section. So, the next one is the folio line. A folio line is considered a line summarizing the publication, including the name, date, page, section, and edition. The date is contained in the line, which could be referred to as the newspaper's deadline. Generally, folios are separated by a vertical separator. You can see the picture. There's a vertical separator in the line. Folio line has been positioned between 2 horizontal separators after the 4 stanza verse. The batch number, issuance number, issue date, and the newspaper's location and price are mentioned on the folio lines. So the next one is the separators, a level surrounded by the horizontal and vertical lines that are the same length as the borders of a page is defined as the horizontal separator lines. Vertical reference lines are the lines that are orthogonal, and horizontal separator lines are start at any horizontal separator line and end up at the another horizontal separator lines. As shown in this picture, 2 main variations can be identified in horizontal separators, that are straight lines, only separators, and straight lines together with decorative separators. And the vertical separators are always straight lines. Graphics and illustrations. According to Esterson, the essence of newspaper designs is deciding how to display the news, which varies every day, but every newspaper's graphic vocabulary remains consistent. As a result, newspaper graphics has a significant impact on their reference. So, The imagery on the opinion of a page is called an editorial illustration or editorial cartoon. It's possibly put in a vertical or horizontal position. So we believe that illustration incorporates on these front pages with the newspaper title helps recognizing the relevant newspaper. Headlines. The headline is a large text that labels each article. Most of the headlines were composed of a random assortment of typefaces, both upper and lower cases, for the top of the front page, centered horizontally, and layered stacks of narrow decks obstructing one another in the rules in between. So, most of the time, alignments of the headlines were centered or justified on the layout, and a different typefaces was used to print the headline in order to stand out from the body text. And here you can see that every title is justified and uses both bilingual texts there. So the next element is the text. A newspaper's most important feature is its text. Text can follow in both vertical and horizontal directions. Using the best technical options, the early people have placed the paragraphs properly on the layout, and bold letters were used to highlight the words. Only black color letters were there and can be seen through the area. As in this image, the text placement of the very first newspaper in disturbing distributing the eye movement of the reader, but the singular newspaper printed afterwards are precise text placement, and it's not eye disturbing. So the tables, numbers, money, and budget percentages and election outcomes abound in some news articles. These numbers created a jumbled with text and confused the reader. They required a systematic approach, so they used tables and graphics. Tables are frequently used to clarify information. So considering the disturbances happened earlier in the newspapers, incorporated tables as same as with the text and without outlining the table. Columns and grids. Every newspaper page is designed with consideration of a simple grid, a simple set of regulation lines that govern the position of elements like images and text boxes. Most of the newspapers follow 3x3 column layouts or 3x4 column layouts when the huge decorative title incorporates in the upper section that use more space for the title. Byline was another component mentioned in the Wills and Pins structure, but most of the time byline was not included in single newspapers. A byline is used to publish the name of the journalist who wrote the newspaper. So, after conducting this visual analysis, it was confirmed that earlier single newspapers followed a certain logical hierarchy to design the front page layout. Apart from that, there were several findings. The title piece is designed very uniquely and identically for single newspapers. Therefore, a new logical hierarchical level can be implemented as title level. When observing the block with the title thoroughly, the title block incorporates several graphical elements. For a selected period, this was a practice in most single newspapers. The title is developed with bilingual title of the newspaper, the stanza verse, folio line, separators, and most newspapers have sidebars. Sidebars are a practice of newspapers that have been divided the upper part into 3 columns. The newspapers that have the upper section divided into 3 columns incorporates the sidebars as a practice. This is the hierarchical structure developed after the visual analysis. Considering the fact that single newspaper layout designer given a huge attention for the title and incorporates the elements, additional hierarchical level was established as newspaper hierarchy, newspaper title level, and upgraded and developed the structure as shown in this picture. And this research would contribute the single newspaper industry in Sri Lanka, and the researchers interested in field to understand the layout patterns of the ancient single newspapers to develop the layout patterns and accompany the knowledge in the future. Apart from this, plenty of researchers can be do in the future. These are the references that I have followed to do this research. And finally, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation to those who assisted me and mentored me through this research. My supervisor and second author of this paper, Dr. Samantha Samaruvikrama, National Archives of Sri Lanka for supporting and finding microfilm copies for newspapers, from former sub-editor and former journalist, Mr. Priyanjan Suresh De Silva, as well as my seniors, for their unconditional support and for the knowledge and experience they have shared with me. And thank you.
Thank you, Hansika, for the interesting presentation. The last presentation for the day, Artifacts of Culture, Christmas Postage Stamps of Sri Lanka, by Ms. Samudra De Silva. A small introduction about Samudra. Samudra is graduated from the Department of Integrated Design, University of Moratuwa, with specialization in media and communication, and currently follows a master's degree by research. Her domains of study include visual communication, visual culture, and cultural compositions. In the current study, the researcher brings the postage stamps, an often overlooked medium of communication, into the spotlight, discussing them as artifacts of culture with regard to the information intrinsic to the culture embedded in these miniature pieces of graphic design. I warmly welcome Ms. Samudra to do the presentation.
Can you help me with the presentation? Thank you, Malindi, and thank you for the introduction, madam. Today I'm going to talk about artifacts of culture, Christmas postage stamps of Sri Lanka. As we know, postage stamps are an integral part of communication system, which is the postal system of the country. And even though postage stamps are less encountered in daily lives today, they are official government-issued documents, and they remain as a primary source of global material and visual culture. Postage stamps serves three main purposes in communication. As we know, postage stamps are technically postage stamps are receipts affixed as an evidence of a prepayment for a postal service. And second, they represent the issuing state as a part of its national repertoire. And often postage stamps have a commemorative purpose. Commemorative stamps are issued reminding people about some important thing, some person or some event, and to remember it in a specific way. Despite the preconceived ideas of importance and the small size of postage stamps, they are considered an ideal means of propaganda. And to point out few reasons why postage stamps are official documents designed, regulated, and issued by states through a centralized dedicated agencies. And by covering the whole territory of the state, even the most isolated communities within it, the national postage system acts as a national communications network. And due to their small size and their mundane appearance in day-to-day lives, and
this discrete appearance allows postage stamps to carry significant messages without the intention of becoming apparent. These are two perfect examples of how powerful the postage stamps are when it comes to communication. The first example, the Solidarity stamp was introduced by Swiss Post to help those affected by COVID-19, and it raised 2.8 million. And Austria chose to promote local social distancing through a postage stamp, which is a very contemporary issue, featuring their famous baby elephant. And we know this texture, which relates to the hoard buying of toilet paper, such as likewise they are addressing very contemporary social and political issues through postage stamps. And to discuss postage stamps as an artifact of culture, as I have done in my study, let me give you a brief introduction about what culture is. In its popular use, the term culture indicates some characteristic ways of behavior of a category of people, or as a collective programming of mind which distinguishes one human group from another. And culture comprises of symbols, language, values, norms, and artifacts. And often an artifact is an aspect of material world that has been modified over the history into goal-directed behavior. Artifacts are made of humans rather than a result of natural phenomena, so they are symbolic, purposeful, and intentional. Artifacts are involved in preserving all kinds of social inheritance, such as ideas, beliefs, norms, conventions, and the like. In addition to telling something about its creator, an artifact often provides insight into the customs, preferences, work and play, lifestyle of the culture in which it was produced in. In this sense, postage stamps can be viewed as a text. Cultural semiotics defines text as a subcategory of artifacts that have a function and are coded signs in a specific way. So postage stamps can be viewed as text of semiotic sense with a culturally specific message, partially textual, that it has text, and partially numeric, that it has a number, and predominantly graphic, encoded by the issuing authority. So to identify visual components of a postage stamp, we have the name of the country and the denomination, we have perforated border, and the most important and most prominent and therefore the most meaningful component, which is the thematic imagery and the title of the stamp. The aim of this study was to study the postage stamps as an artifact of culture, reference to thematic stamps. So the methods I used was it was a visual survey on postage stamps issued on a specific theme, and for the selection of the samples, there was two notable occasions where commemorative stamps are issued annually as a practice in Sri Lanka, which is Christmas and Vesak. In a previous study, I have studied the Vesak postage stamp. For this study, I have chosen to study Christmas stamps. Since its inauguration in 1980, there has been a total of 35 issues of Christmas stamps, and in this particular study, I have selected 5 issues of Christmas stamps representing different decades. And for to formulate a framework for the study, visual study, I am discussing the physical appearance, the visual representation, the cultural perspective, and studying the postage stamps as an artifact. On the physical appearance, I am discussing these key points, and on the cultural perspective, I am discussing the meanings acquired in specific context and the visual representation. And when it comes to analyzing the visual as an artifact, I am concentrating on its connection to the big picture, its iconic associations, cultural allusions, and connection to the social group, as well as meanings acquired in the specific context, which is Sri Lankan Buddhist culture. To move on to case study 1, these two postage stamps issued in 1983 depicts nativity, which is the birth of the Jesus, and the illustration style is a stylized hand-drawn illustration. To discuss these two postage stamps in detail, let's move on. Here's a visual comparison between the 1983 Christmas stamp and a guard stone at Ratnaprasadaya, Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka. Both of these illustrations follow the illustration of the Christmas stamp and the Muragala follow an oblong shape and form. And there are central figures of beings that are mythical and considered divine. And there are figures of doors, and the granular texture of tone is visually interpreted in the stamp. So this can be identified as an attempt to subtly reintroduce the divinity in Christianity, which is the holy in the Christianity, which is the Jesus and the family, the birth of the Jesus, in a more relatable and tangible way to the Buddhist-dominated society of Sri Lanka. And to move on to the case study 2, it's Christmas 1985, depicts two Marian statues, which one is the statue at the shrine of Our Lady of Matara, and the other statue is at the shrine of Our Lady of Madhu in Sri Lanka. The first stamp, which depicts the statue of Our Lady of Matara, the statue is believed to be, the statue was found in the sea by the statue was found in the sea by the fishermen of Valigama, and this statue is said to be lost in the sea thrice. Once when on the way and on the way back to being sent to a restorer in Ghent, Belgium, and for the last time recently in the 2009 tsunami disaster. The statue is considered to be of miraculous power and healing power. The people of all ethnicities, despite their religious groups, come to the shrine of Our Lady of Matara on the annual festival of the church, because of believing in this miraculous healing power. And this stamp, the background of this stamp depicts the context, which is the iconic landscape of Coconut Tree Hill, Matara, and also the background. There's a small illustration that depicts fishing boats, which denote the livelihood of the community of Matara. And this stamp depicts the statue of Lady of Madhu, which is considered as an icon of pilgrimage and devotees of all ethnicities. The festival of this church lies on August, so there are school holidays. It's the school holidays in Sri Lanka, and the whole families can make the long trip to Madhu. And this stamp, the background of this stamp also depicts the context, which is the dry zone flora and fauna in Sri Lanka, where the city of Madhu is located in dry zone of northern Sri Lanka. And moving on to case study 3, the two postage stamps, Christmas 1992. The first stamp depicts the Holy Family, and the second stamp depicts a Sri Lankan family attending the church. They are also stylized hand-drawn illustrations, and in both of these stamps, the Christmas star, which is believed to be a comet or a supernova or any other celestial phenomenon that is symbolic of the birth of Jesus, is illustrated. It binds the two in this composition. These two stamps were issued together, so it kind of joins the two incidents or the two fragments with the symbolic Christmas star, which symbolizes the birth of Jesus. And in the second stamp, the former Sri Lankan attire is shown with the family resembling the custom of attending the church in the best clothing. And in the case study 4, the first stamp depicts nativity, And the second stamp depicts St. Mary's Cathedral in Galle, Sri Lanka. In the first stamp, the concept of peace promoted in Christianity is visualized with the Dove of Peace and children of the 4 different ethnicities in Sri Lanka. And the St. Mary's Church, as depicted in the second postage stamp, is an icon of gold dust and the diocese and the landmark of city of gold. And this building is of religious, archaeological and architectural value, which is again an artifact of Sri Lankan culture. And this set of stamps, which is issued in 2018, shows nativity as well as the Holy Family. They are also stylized hand-drawn illustrations. And here's a visual comparison between the stamp and the temple painting from Shailabimbaramaya, Dodanduwa, Sri Lanka. This temple painting belongs to the southern school tradition of Sri Lanka. Clearly, the color scheme and the illustration style is inspired from this kind of temple painting of Sri Lanka. The colors are predominantly vermilion, yellow, ochre, white, black, indigo, and green. When we compare, we can see the botanical elements on the background on both on the illustration of the stamp as well as the temple painting. And there are fine architectural details, and there are very detailed fabric designs, and we can observe that the appearance and the style and the attire of the human figures are similar, and they both follow a horizontal layout. And to summarize and to present you the findings, the visual content on Christmas stamps demonstrate elements of Christian culture such as symbols, such as Christmas star and the halo, and language. There are 3 languages, Sinhala, English and Tamil on these postage stamps, and their norms has been visualized such as visiting the church. Values such as peace and unity, gift giving and sharing has been visualized, and also the artifacts such as medieval clothing, grocery has been visualized on these stamps. The sample of stamps also depicted tangible material artifacts such as the Marian statues, the rosary, as well as intangible conceptual artifacts such as the faith in God, peace, healing power, conception. And Christmas stamps portray both secular as well as religious aspects of Christmas culture, such as gift giving and attending the church mass respectively. And Christmas stamps are planned to act as carriers of ideological meanings and values in Christianity to the audiences. So for further research, I suggest that we are clear that Christmas postage stamps are planned to act as carriers of philosophical messages in Christianity to the audiences. And as for further research, I would like to suggest the way how people perceive such messages is yet to be discussed through further research. And to summarize, this study confirms the role of postage stamps as a communication tool. And this framework used for analysis can be adapted to derive and study culture-related information from different postage stamps across cultures, such as Christmas culture, Vesak culture, or likewise. And findings of this study presents knowledge for designers and the authorities regulating stamp design programs, which could be referred to when designing the visual content on postage stamps. And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Samudra. I would like to, it's the end of the presentations. I would like to invite the speakers can we get some volunteers to arrange the place? There will be only 3 speakers. Unfortunately, we are not having the very first presenters. I would like to invite Ms. Tarindi Tilakaratna, Ms. Hansika Randati, and Ms. Samudra De Silva. Can we have the mic, please? I would like to invite all of you to ask any questions. We will first take Ms. Tarindi's research. If I remind you the title, A Comparison Between Laksana Packaging and Gift and Souvenir Packaging. Is there any question from the audience? Anything? Any question? Okay, if there's nothing from the audience, Tarindi, can I ask you whether, have you taken any steps to introduce these findings to the Laksana officers or those who are involved with the packaging design?
Yes, I have discussed.
Yeah.
Yes, I have discussed with the Laksana officials, and the point was what they were believing the gift and souvenir aspect was only from the tea and spices, but when I explained about what we can do from craft products, the opportunities we can gain through that, like we can introduce a new sector for gift and souvenir packaging, and as well as a value addition we can increase the sales price of a product so that it would be an additional cost for their products. They can, of course, they can earn some profit from the gift and souvenir packagings.
But I believe it should be a system change sort of thing. Yes.
It takes time because first we have to find a specific community to implement the packaging. Then after we have to teach them how to implement the packaging, like the techniques we can use, the material selections and all those kinds. It wouldn't be easy. It takes a few time to implement the whole process.
Okay. Thank you, Tarindi. I believe such a research, even though from the researcher's perspective it is a hard part, as well as when it comes to the implementation, it's another stage. So well done on the research.
Thank you.
Okay, then yes, I see a question coming from the audience.
So my question is, since this product was used only for souvenirs, can this same type of idea or approach be used, especially when making packages related to export products like tea and other spices which are being exposed by Sri Lanka, to present it in a more interactive way? Can it be researched in further researches or projects?
You mean in spices and teas?
Yeah, major export items. This is for major souvenirs targeting tourism industry. So there is the export market as well, which brings in revenue to Sri Lanka. So can this be implemented or be developed in such a way?
Yeah, if we are focusing on export market, we have to research more about the materials, especially some countries ban like raw materials, like natural materials, because they have bugs and insects. So we have to research more about the material, and as well if we are exporting, it will be a bulk packaging, like we have to transport them through a container or something, so we have to focus about the weight and the pressure each packaging and the product has to gain through the containers. We have to focus all about that area too. Yeah, of course we can implement it, but it's a whole lot process. First, if we can identify the correct market, we can of course implement it.
So that means each and every segment is a different research again. Okay. Any more questions? Oh, okay. We will go to the next, to Hansika. It will be, if I remind the research, the title was The Logical Hierarchy of the Front Page Layouts of the Earliest Sinhala Newspapers Published in Sri Lanka. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Hello, Ki.
Hello.
How can you justify this identification of vintage newspapers will help to prevent the death of newspaper industry. Nowadays, nobody read newspapers. So, how can you justify the significance of the research?
That's a that's a true incident. Like, we are not reading newspapers these days, but when we refer, there are some categories. Like, there are some people still reading the newspapers. That's why the newspaper is publishing till today. So I'm talking about the current issue in the industry and how we can adapt something from the past and the layout patterns to the modern way. So we are not incorporating so many things, like we are looking at the same layout, same types, same fonts every day. That's why the people are not interested in reading anything in Sinhala or single newspapers. So I'm just like giving an idea. You can just incorporate something like looking at the hierarchy, and you can read that newspaper or incorporate something for the modern usage of the newspapers.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Dr. Sumantri?
Yeah, I'll also add in to the question. One is also the research is actually on the logical hierarchy. And what's important there is this knowledge of analyzing and justifying the hierarchy in this particular context can be applied in any context. So even though it is not applied, even though the study was mainly focused on a printed form, this knowledge can be applied into online mode as well. And most importantly, we have to understand that the context and the cultural change here is that the West uses may not be the same. So therefore, that significance is what we also identified, and it can be brought in. Yeah.
Thank you for the explanation. Any more questions from the audience? Looks no from there. Hansika, did you get any steps to introduce your findings to the newspaper companies? Or
yes, madam,
have you discussed?
There was some, like when it comes to the earlier single newspapers, they were decorating the titles like they are hand printed or the crafted ones, but in modern time they are not using such things, using only the Jamulu font and do the typing and the printing process and production. So when it comes to implementing the findings for these layout patterns for the modern layouts, that will be definitely a good point.
I believe if our graduates, graphic designers, if you all go to the newspaper industry, you will do a big change, I'm sure on that. Okay. Yeah, I believe there's no more questions for Hansika. The last presentation by Ms. Samudra De Silva. The title was Artifacts of Culture, Christmas Postage Stamps of Sri Lanka. Any questions from the audience? That was a very interesting presentation, Samudra. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Samudra, I will ask a very small question. Yes, sorry, I didn't see you.
Hello, yeah, Samudra, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a wonderful presentation. My question is, normally when we do research, so we need to think about the subjective nature, and as researchers, we need to be objective as much as possible, just to ensure the validity of findings, right? In your research, so what are the parameters, measures that you took to ensure this nature of validity, to ensure the objective nature of your own observation as a researcher?
I have conducted roundtable discussions with, when I was doing this research, it was with clergy, like who have some knowledge on the Christianity, and this was actually much of my own analysis. I find it in
this is actually a part of a larger research that I am conducting on. This is actually this research is mostly based on my analysis, but in the next level, in the master's level thesis, I have incorporated the other interviews, the